Brexit deal for Northern Ireland gets its formal sign-off.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Saturday the 25th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, the UK and the EU have finally signed off on the new arrangements for Northern Ireland after the government won the backing of MPs for the Windsor framework earlier this week.
King Charles's state visit to France has been abandoned after the French president warned it wouldn't be sensible for him to go to the country amid violent protests over pension reforms.
And despite a number of criminal charges looming over him, the former US President Donald Trump will hold a rally in Texas this weekend as he tries to make it back into the White House.
And as ever, you can join in any of our discussions this morning by emailing gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
So let's start then with the Prime Minister's deal for Northern Ireland, the Windsor framework, as it's known. It's been formally signed off.
Yes, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly and the European Commission's Maros Sefcovic finally ratified the agreement after the government won the backing of MPs earlier this week.
Well, let's talk to political commentator Peter Spencer, who's here with us today, about this and plenty of other politics around as well this week. Peter, what do we make of this? I mean, it's interesting. It's all gone through. It's been praised by a lot of people. However, there were some rebels, but importantly, the DUP still aren't behind it.
No, they aren't, and that would have been the really golden prize had he managed to get that, because it would have meant that proper government would have started again in Northern Ireland. Everything would have settled down. There almost certainly would have been millions of pounds of inward investment, and Joe Biden, who's very proud of his Irish roots, would probably have looked more favourably on a new, juicy, gorgeous trade deal between the United Kingdom and America. However, the matter of the DUP, it's worth remembering that waspish commentators say that their motto is Ulster says no, whatever the question. And it's also worth bearing in mind that they have had their pay docked for not doing their work, and also, as politicians, they quite like running things. So it is possible at some later point they might come round. In the meantime, of course, with the Windsor framework actually up and running, it does mean that trade can operate. I mean, business will be well chuffed at what's happened.
I mean, but for people in Northern Ireland, I mean, still the DUP refusing to re-enter into power sharing. It must be so frustrating.
Oh, I mean, of course it's frustrating, yes. But as I say, you know, Ulster says no, whatever the question. And, I mean, there is the hope there. I mean, that's certainly what Downing Street are banking on, that as time goes on and they realise that history has moved on and left them behind. And it's also, they also will have taken note of the debate last week in the Commons, in which it got through very comfortably indeed. I mean, it was widely expected that there might be a huge rebellion against this from the hardcore Eurosceptics, but a line from the legendary journalist Claude Cockburn springs to mind. Years ago, they used to have a competition in the Times each night on the sub-editor's desk for who could come up with the most boring headline. He won one night with small earthquake in Chile, not many dead. OK, move that on. Small earthquake in Westminster, not many dissenters.
Yeah, which is interesting. But from one sort of difficult piece of legislation to another, because, of course, the Prime Minister is still facing all this uproar over small boats.
Yes.
And how to deal with all of this. And it's a very difficult one, isn't it? Because it seems like politicians are split between Sunak not being hard enough or being far too hard.
Oh, precisely.
There's not a lot of centre ground here.
No, absolutely right. Well, I mean, that sort of, it comes back to the point of the Conservative Party, not so much a broad church and nicely united as more of a coalition of warring tribes. And that sense of discipline and that will to govern appears to be sort of a thing of the past at present. And most certainly, yes, there are... I mean, it might come to nothing in the event, but there will be votes next week in the Commons about the new migration legislation, and it is suggested that amendments will be put which demand that judges will not have the power to potentially enable asylum seekers to remain in the country. That's on the right. On the left, of course, there are widespread concerns that this legislation actually breaches international law and makes us look pretty ghastly, really. And for that reason, the possibility of all manner of ructions is very much extant.
Even within the Tory party, isn't there? I mean, there's
totally.
immigration
Yeah.
hardliners who want us to have a tough stance, and then those who are concerned about what it means for international law.
Sure.
Should we have a look at France? And King Charles meant to be in France. Yeah, tomorrow was meant to be going on his state visit. Macron has postponed it, came from the French. He said it was not sensible and it lacked common sense. I mean, it's not a good look for the French. It's quite embarrassing, isn't it?
Mais la vie, c'est comme ça. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire?
Oh, show off, Peter.
What? I mean, it has to be. I mean, you can't help but think, well, the Sunak's got his problems with his unruly party. That is nothing next to what Macron's against, is it not? And, I mean, it makes him look... I mean, there's not much you could do about it, and apart from anything else. The protesters burned down the place where the king was supposed to be having his sups. And so there's really not much you could do about it, but at the same time, it does give the impression of a country which is not being run very effectively by Macron. And then, of course, there's a point about his Marie Antoinette moment where he had this ridiculously expensive watch and a sort of this... I mean, I would make the point in parenthesis that Rishi Sunak has actually contrived to earn £5 million in the last 3 years, so he's not alone in having a bob or two in his pocket. But nonetheless, you know, I mean, you know, there's this extraordinarily expensive watch on display. And, you know, Marie Antoinette said, let me kick. Well, you know, I mean, it just doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. All about the optics. Peter, for now, thank you very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Can't wait.
It is 7 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today.
And the head of the Fire Brigade Union is calling for mass non-cooperation and non-compliance with the government's new anti-strike laws. The minimum services level bill would force certain union members in key sectors to work on strike days or face losing their jobs. FBU General Secretary Matt Rack says the bill is one of the most draconian attacks on the rights of working people in decades.
Security guards at Heathrow will strike over Easter after talks over pay failed. The airport says it has contingency plans in place to deal with Unite's 10-day walkout and it will keep it running as normal. Heathrow says it's offered workers a 10% pay rise.
Servicemen who helped carry the Queen's coffin in Edinburgh are among those recognised in an honours list. The Royal Regiment of Scotland carried the coffin to St Giles's Cathedral to lie in rest. The Chief Steward of the Cathedral also received honours under the Royal Victorian Order, recognising services to the monarch.
I'm a little bit torn on that.
Oh, I think that's really nice.
Well, I think it's nice, and I think it's a heck of a job. What those young, I think they were all men, weren't they? But what those young men did.
They were young as well.
It's a tough, you know, that is a tough, terrifying job with actually a very heavy coffin. And they literally the eyes of the world watching you. However, you know, it is just an assignment they are given. They are just told this is you know, this is what you have to do, and it's in rotation. You know, it's all in rotation. They always have people ready to do it.
I see.
So,
so it just so happened that
it just so happened. It was. I mean, a few years ago, my husband was meant to be one of those.
Really?
If she had died several years ago, he would have carried the coffin, in London at least.
Wow.
But it's always in rotation, and they're all picked on size. So they're all the same size.
Oh, I see.
So there you go. So there's a method. So it's quite nice. I think it's nice that they're getting recognised. But however, there will be some people who think, oh,
that could have been me.
It would have been me if it was 6 months
So, yeah,
earlier.
I
Sort of thing.
understand
Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit.
They did do us proud, though.
But they did do us proud.
Watching them and thinking they are.
It was.
Fantastic.
Do you know what? I watched it and was scared for them.
I think everyone had their hearts in their mouths, didn't they?
I mean, having carried a couple of coffins myself over the years, and just ordinary ones, and they're heavy enough. And you think for one of those lead-lined and all the rest of it, it must be a terrifying thing to do, actually.
Well, they did us proud. They really did. Let us know what you think about that. GBviews at gbnews.uk.
What a funny thing to be talking about at 6:10 in the morning.
I think
Carrying
we've spoken about
coffins.
weirder things.
No, we probably have.
I wouldn't put it past us.
It's part of life, isn't it?
But no, it is. It is very interesting, and what an honour for them. I mean,
Well,
wow.
it is. It's got to be the honour of and I actually
lifetime.
know someone else who was. Look at me, I seem to know everybody this morning, don't I? But one of the Welsh guards actually who was standing, with the guarding the coffin when it was in London.
Yes, who also did an incredible job.
They did an incredible job, and actually seeing the brother of a friend of mine, Johnny, when he was watching and taking over, and he did it when the royals were in watching, paying their respects. Ooh. And to see him and to know him doing that, and I thought, heck, I feel proud of him. What his family must feel, I don't know.
So lovely, yeah.
Amazing.
The pressure, especially there when the royals visited and the Queen was lying in state. It's incredible, really. I think they all did us proud, all the servicemen and women who stepped up in those few weeks. It was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Anyway, should we move on?
Yes, let's.
Go on, then. Let's talk about Donald Trump, who's continuing his campaign for the 2024 presidential elections in earnest. He's got a huge rally planned for later today in, of all places, Waco, Texas.
Yes, but his decision to hold the event in the southern town, which became infamous for an armed standoff 30 years ago, has raised eyebrows. Well,
the rally also comes as speculation over his potential arrest, which is believed to be imminent. He thought it was going to be last Tuesday. That all continues, of course.
Well, we're glad to be joined in the studio now by someone who's plugged into all of this. It's the Spectator's deputy editor, Freddie Gray. Good morning.
Good morning.
To you, Freddie. It's pretty remarkable, isn't it? First of all, third bid for the White House, second time since Donald Trump became president himself, with these criminal charges looming over him.
Yeah. Well, what I say is, if you thought that the 2016 Donald Trump campaign was crazy, get ready for the real craziness, because 2020 was pretty crazy too. 2024 is going to be insane on every level. Trump is a master of publicity. His difficulty now is that a lot of people have Trump fatigue. They're not that interested. So he has to sort of go to ever more crazy, extreme measures to fire up that attention. And what he did last weekend by saying, I'm going to be indicted on Tuesday, I think he is probably going to be indicted. I don't think that's fake. But certainly he's leaned into it. He's sort of fired it up. He's made it into this big story.
And the problem is that way it works in his favour almost, doesn't it, in terms of his PR?
I think it certainly does. I think Trump's great strength is his enemies always overreach. So this prosecution against him is ridiculous. I mean, it's clearly a get Trump campaign, and they're trying to find the crime to get him on. They've tried various different things. At the moment, it's the Stormy Daniels affair, or alleged affair. I don't think they've found nothing substantial. They can't decide whether it's a federal crime or a state crime. And yet it still looks like he probably will be indicted. It's all a bit mysterious. We don't know whether this prosecutor in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, who's getting attacked viciously by everyone in Trump world, we don't know whether he's persuaded the grand jury or not to convict.
As you say, it was wild last time, and you say wilder this time. However, there's a big difference, isn't there, this time round, in the shape of Ron DeSantis?
This is fascinating, yes. So Trump world is very, very angry about Ron DeSantis. I spoke to Roger Stone yesterday, who's a confidant of Donald Trump.
Did you really?
And the bitterness towards DeSantis is striking. They are saying vicious things about him. And actually, what they think that he's turned on Trump. And yes, he did this Piers Morgan interview in which he said slightly critical things, but he's trying to be very careful not to criticise Trump. But Trump desperately wants a war of words, because if he can portray DeSantis as a traitor, then a lot of his voters will...
Well, he's already come out with Ron DeSanctimonious, hasn't he? But, I mean, does that sort of language wash, in terms of Trump fatigue? I mean, I know we sort of see through it here, but do the Americans?
I don't think Ron DeSantimonious is one of his better names. I think...
And he's got a lot, hasn't he?
Tiny Ron is one he's going with. I think he's he'll go with various different insults, and this is what he does. This is what Trump does brilliantly. He baits people into overreacting. I think this week DeSantis probably did overreact a little bit, but he is a threat to Trump from the right in a way that no other person has been.
Do you think Trump feels threatened by him?
I think a little bit, yes. I mean, I think, the polls suggest Trump is still the front runner by a long way, and he has a huge base that will always be loyal to him. But in as much as we can read anything into polls at the moment, DeSantis is commanding about 30% of the Republican vote without having officially declared yet. So he is a threat to Trump, and he's a threat from the right. The question is, do people who voted for Trump switch to DeSantis thinking, Trump fatigue, we've had enough of this guy, we need something new? Or do they say, actually, you know, DeSantis shouldn't have turned on Trump, he should have remained loyal to him, because he was, you know, almost pathetically loyal, DeSantis, for years. You know, he had this ridiculous video in which he had himself reading The Art of the Deal, Trump's book, to his child in bed to show what a big Trump fan he was.
But then, do you believe American politicians in that? I mean,
No.
It's quite scary. If politicians over here did what they do in the States, there'd be all hell let loose. I mean, you look at people like Lindsey Graham, who was, when Trump was first trying to get the nomination way back when, in 2015, 2016, and Lindsey Graham was doing all the talk shows saying, no, we mustn't do it, this man's a disgrace. And now they're golfing buddies and he's the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, it's very odd.
Well, you're right that American politicians lie a lot. Lindsey Graham is a particularly egregious example. I think he's one of the more ridiculous figures in American politics. And yet they sort of hang around and they still win because, you know, American politics is dirty. It's a very dirty business, and everybody knows it is. But, you know, there's a reason why it's so dirty. It's because there's a lot of power on the line.
Can we talk about Trump's language? Because Stephen touched upon that. Because it has been very interesting this week. He's been speaking on his own personal social media, kind of a call to arms, it could be said, telling his supporters to protest, take our nation back, our country is being destroyed, they're telling us to be peaceful. The rhetoric has really intensified this week from Trump, hasn't it? Definitely,
and I think he's going for this fire and brimstone approach. Yesterday he talked about death and destruction if he's arrested. I think what he's doing there is he's trying to goad media interest. So he's trying to get the media to say, oh, my word, he's threatening revolution, he's threatening civil war. And that's what he did so effectively in 2016, was he made people think, I can't believe he's actually saying this. And that generates huge amount of interest. But it's always sort of very, you know, he doesn't directly say, go out and cause death and destruction. It's always sort of carefully phrased to be, he could say he was joking. You know, two tweets or two Truth Social posts later, he posted a video of him poll voting over a Twitter icon with Truth Social, you know. So it's always sort of, is it laugh, is it a joke? You know, you never know with Trump. That's the sort of crazy mystery of it. Do you think there is an appetite in America? I mean, I know, you know, Biden has not proved to be popular and has not achieved a great deal in many respects, right? At least not what people were expecting. Is there an appetite for someone like Donald Trump to come back in, all bluster, basically reinstate his family back into the White House, which was an extremely odd situation in and of itself, and not appear to achieve a great deal? I mean, are people happy with that just because he's a character? Well, that's the very good point. You know, in 2016, he was effectively an outsider. Now he's trying to be an outsider again, but of course he isn't really. He has been president, and he did not destroy the deep state, as he says he'll do now. So that's a sort of weakness in his campaign, which he's trying to address. He's trying to say, you know, I know what I'm doing now. You know, I can identify the people and I will be ruthless. What a lot of his critics will say, and what some of the people who are turning to Ron DeSantis to say, is why didn't he do this before? You know, he knows about how powerful the Democrats are. Why didn't he take them on before?
Freddie, what are we expecting to see tonight in Waco? And can we also have a word on the choice of that location? Because it was the location of an armed standoff where 80 people died 30 years ago. Yes, I think for Americans who feel that the deep state in America is all-powerful, and I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of people do think that, and, you know, there is a very powerful federal system in America. Waco is a sort of holy shrine. You know, in 1993, there was this standoff in which federal agents really probably did overreact and killed quite a lot of people. And so it's become this kind of, you know, people say far-right shrine, and it's true that like a lot of quite wacky groups consider Waco a place where, you know, the deep state overreached. So Trump is definitely sort of choosing that as a place to launch his campaign. And he's launching this campaign from the crazy right. And if it's successful, this campaign, he will sort of pivot towards the middle as we get into the middle of next year. And he will sort of, he'll stop quite doing the crazy baiting, and he'll talk more about social security and things like that. Whether it works is a fascinating question. I just don't know at the moment.
And you have to add in the DeSantis element, which makes it even more mysterious.
Good to talk to you this morning,
Really?
Freddie.
Great
Thank
pleasure.
you very much indeed. It is fascinating. The problem is, it's like watching a Netflix
Horror movie.
Mockumentary.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's real life. This is the problem.
Well, there's Trump's war on reality, yeah.
Well, yeah. Anyway, if you've got thoughts on that, get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We've got lots more coming up, including the impact of inflation on the pumps and the shops and what it's going to mean for you.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:23, morning to you. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
Still lots to come on the programme, including St Barts Hospital in London is celebrating its 900th birthday today. Our Lisa Hartle will have a report on that.
And we'll bring you the latest on the controversial new law on minimum levels of service during strikes. Do you back it or not?
And as always, we always want to know what you, the viewers, think. So do get in touch by email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Now, I am intrigued because just before we came out of the break, Ellie said to me, "What do you think of the French?" In what sense do you mean? I want to follow this through.
I mean, look at the front of the FT there, the scenes in France, I mean, not just generally how you feel about the French. I mean, it's crazy. I think 10 days of this.
I think it's cracker. I've heard a few people being interviewed who are protesting, and some of the things they're saying are extraordinary. I mean, look, what would you want the retirement age to be raised? No, of course not. We all like to think we can retire nice and early. So, of course not to get your state pension. However, we're all living for longer, which is a good thing, and this is what you have to do. If you live for longer, then you've got to work for longer.
I mean, they would say it's because Emmanuel Macron pushed it through rather than taking it to a vote. So I think that's been a key issue as well.
But they were protesting before it was even pushed through on a presidential level.
That's true. It's been bubbling for months, hasn't it? And it's come to a head, quite literally. But the scenes in France are extraordinary now.
But they do like to protest.
They do.
There's
Their blood, isn't it? It's revolution.
Yes, yeah. There was one lady I heard being interviewed who said, you know, I've been protesting for 60 years and this is the worst one I've ever seen.
Oh.
Really? Protesting for 60? What have you been protesting about? I mean, anything that's going, I should think.
Yeah, honestly, it's part of it seems to be French culture, and you know, if you don't like something, you get out in the streets and you make.
Have you protested on anything?
No. Have you?
No, the most I did the whale walk for Greenpeace once when I was a teenager.
Oh, that's nice.
Which wasn't really a protest about anything, but it's saving the whale, which I think is quite a nice thing.
That is quite a nice thing.
But anyway,
but yeah, let us know what you think about the scenes in France. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary watching it from over the pond over here, not the big pond between the US and here, but the little one, the Channel. Let us know what you think. I mean, it is significant, I think, that Macron has told King Charles, so it's probably best you don't pop over on Sunday.
Yeah. Yes.
Very interesting.
Michael says the French are not subject to the powers that be. Well, they're given to insurrection and overthrow. That's true. Look at all the burning buildings. Appalling behaviour. Yeah. I
mean, when they set fire to Bordeaux Town Hall I think it was yesterday. It was significant, wasn't it? And Julie's made a very good point. She says, good morning to you both. Good morning, Julie. Looking at the GB News schedule on the website now, and you're starting at 5 a.m. tomorrow. I will be up. I just wanted to check.
No.
You can clear this up.
No, it's because the clocks change.
Unfortunately.
I don't know why that's not sort of updated on the website. Maybe it's subject to... I don't know how these things work.
It will feel like
it's 5 o'clock today's time. I will not be on air at 5 o'clock in the morning. No. 6 o'clock. But the clocks change tonight at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And we lose an hour's sleep.
We do.
We do. So get to bed early tonight, people.
Yes.
And we need to especially.
We need to. Be interesting to see the viewing figures for the 6 o'clock hour tomorrow. Might be a bit on the small side.
Yeah, maybe set your alarms if you're desperate.
Yeah. Anyway.
Up the numbers.
GB Views at GB News, if you've got any thoughts this morning, we would love to hear from you.
We like the company, don't we?
Now, this week, the Office for National Statistics revealed that inflation is climbing again, despite the government's stated mission to halve it.
Well, our South East of England reporter Ray Addison went to Horsham in West Sussex to find out how people and businesses are coping.
The place that I am seeing the cost of living the most is when I go to the supermarket and I cannot believe what a basket of groceries costs me.
Food is really sky high.
Almost all prices up.
I just can't get over how expensive it is these days. So, yeah, I'm feeling it.
The cost of living is on the rise again. UK inflation jumped unexpectedly last month, with food prices at their highest rate for more than 45 years, hitting consumers struggling to pay their bills. Mohammed Arshad runs Noor Cash and Carry in Horsham. He says customers are wrestling with the increase.
They are crying, the people. At the moment, you know, the too much price is high price. We are buying too much on high price. The people, when they're buying, they're checking the prices gone up. It's too much effect on the sale. The people coming less in that store. We try to sell, to convince the people, but they're saying the price is too much everywhere. People can't survive in this condition.
One positive amid the price hikes is an overall fall in the price of motor fuel. The annual price dropped to 4.6% in February from 7.7% the month before.
Yeah, I was really impressed actually. Last week when I fueled up, I was like, wow, you know, this is really helping.
Well, the feeling is better now. It's good.
I'm probably saving maybe £40 or something from the peak to now.
James Harris runs haulage company HGS Southern. His 7 lorries use 60,000 litres of diesel every month. At the price peak, that was costing him £36,000. But that's now fallen to 26,000.
We're always going to be positive about a decrease in costings. It means we can expand, we can go further afield, you know, and we don't have to be on the edge of our seat so much.
However, for some competitors, the price fall has been too late.
We've seen multiple companies now failing. I've had, you know, friends that have had companies that they've had to shut down because it's just not feasible. We're surviving, but now the fuel prices have come down a little bit, you know, it helps.
Although there are clearly some positives, the latest interest figures show the cost of living crisis is far from over for many British households and businesses. Ray Addison, GB News.
Oh, you do. I tell you what, you notice it at the petrol pump. Mind you, it's when
petrol pump. Oh.
It's it's the ridiculous thing that I drive past somewhere and think, oh, it's only 1.47 a litre.
Yeah,
oh,
I know.
Let's stop there.
I
and fill
saw
it
one.
up.
I saw 1.43 yesterday.
Did you?
Wonderful. Yeah, had a full tank, unfortunately.
But isn't it ridiculous? That's a ridiculous amount of money to pay
Silly,
for petrol.
isn't it?
But it's cheaper than it was.
I remember the 197, 198.
That's crazy. I never actually paid £2, but it came close.
Really?
Yeah, it came close, but I never actually paid the £2. But it was costing. I mean, I've got quite a big tank on mine, but it was costing like £140, £150 to fill it up.
Oof.
And you just like, what?
I told you about my friend the other day who bought a petrol car, a big one. Wait, diesel.
Diesel.
Diesel's more expensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she filled it up and she hadn't done her research and it was like £150 for a tank. She's a hairdresser, so she has to drive for a living. She was like, I don't think I'll be able to keep the car, it's so expensive. Wow. £150 a tank, it's a lot, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Yeah. But are you feeling it at the pumps? Are you feeling it in the shops? Let us know, where are you feeling the cost of living and the rising cost of inflation?
I got told off when I got home yesterday.
Oh, right.
Because, you know, I mentioned I'm buying cheap pop and cheap bread and all that sort of thing. And I got told off. So you have to tell everyone watching and listening that we're buying all these really cheap brands. Now, why? I don't care.
I get told off all the time.
I don't care. It's true. That's reality, isn't it? We're all feeling it.
We're all feeling it, yes. We're all making changes, aren't we, to the way that we shop and the way that we buy. So do let us know. We're nosy. We'd like to know.
Yeah.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Look, much more to come for you, including the papers. And we've got a real treat for you this morning because Pete Price is here alongside Emma Wolfe. Should be fun. See you in a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, The People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie at 6:34. I've just got to bring you this. Talk about working in old age, and if we live longer, we've got to work longer. Is what the French are protesting about. Baz from Cardiff, morning Baz, says it's OK for Stephen to say work for longer. Try working on building site past 50. That's 35 years plus on cold, hard graft, not sitting on your rear reading an auto cue. And do you know what, Baz? I agree with you.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. This is not like working on a building site. It's not even like working indoors at a factory. I used to work in a shoe factory.
Did you?
Years ago. I used to make shoes, yeah.
What kind of shoes?
Well, all sorts of shoes.
Oh, great.
And that's not like working on a building site, but that was actually hard work. So you're absolutely right, Baz, on that one.
Yeah, that's hard graft.
All credit to you. This type of work is a lot easier to do for longer than actually slogging away.
Yeah.
So, fair point.
Yep, point well made, Baz. And Mary says she agrees with the French outrage. Our retirement age has gone up to the point that many will not be able to enjoy their retirement. That's a good point. Recently, it was reported that our life expectancy was lowering again. Will they reduce the retirement age? Never.
Well, yes. No, that's not right, though, Mary. Just to correct you, it's not. Our life expectancy isn't lowering. It was a misleading headline. What it is our life expectancy is not growing as quickly as some other countries, but it is still going up. So that's the idea. We're going to live longer, so therefore we've got to work longer. But you both make valid points.
Yeah,
there you go.
But we're talking about the protests in France about upping the retirement age there. It's not going down well with the French. Let us know what you make of that. GBNews at gbnews.uk.
Let's have a look at the newspapers for you. And in the Express this morning, attention is drawn to King Charles and that visit to France being postponed amid pension protests in the capital.
The Eye leads with the King reportedly seeking a more active role in UK diplomacy as he reveals his disappointment with not being able to lead the Brexit reset in France this weekend.
The Times has King Charles' first state visit being postponed after Macron warned it would become the target of nationwide revolt.
As with most front pages this morning, the Mail also gives light to the postponement of King Charles' state visit to France.
Macron surrenders to the mob, the headline, which seems a bit... I don't know, you've got to think about safety and logistics and all that. The Telegraph says the UK reset with EU in disarray after that visit is cancelled.
And the Mirror leads to something entirely different. It leads to the man with severe toothache travelling to war-torn Ukraine in order to seek care after failing to get NHS treatment.
And finally, the front page of The Star leads with baguettes being blamed for a global pandemic of wind.
Very polite way of putting it.
Is how I'm phrasing it. I don't like the other word.
No, neither do I.
So you're not saying it later, Peter. You are not.
Got to behave yourself.
Yes, because Emma Wolfe is here and legendary broadcaster Pete Price. So got to behave yourselves this morning.
I can't say the word.
No.
Oh, you might as well get rid of me now then.
I'm squeamish about
They've
words
only
like
given me that story to say the word.
Passing wind.
We'll challenge you not to say the word.
Anyway, we'll come to that in a moment. In the meantime, Pete, the Express, looking at the visit to France.
Yeah, I think it's right that King Charles doesn't go to France. It's dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous. Do you know what I think is sad about it? I understand them demonstrating about the problem about age and what Baz said about working on the Building Society. I understand what he means. But also, to keep active keeps you young. I really, really, really think that's important to keep young.
But will you give up when you get to 60 or 62, Pete?
Stop trying to pull me. You know you're married, man. There's no need for that sort of talk. I think, going back to France, I think what is sad is the violence. I think it's absolute... And they do it all the time. But who are the people that are doing the violence? That's what bothers me, because there's a lot of people that just want to demonstrate and make their point.
They do, but there are a million people out on the streets, not just in Paris, but across France. And I was talking to a friend who lives down in the south of France. She said it's not just about the pensions, it's young people as well. It's a lot of pent-up anger. And you know what? The French do it properly. But the French are out on the streets, and I don't condone the violence, and there's a picture on the front of the Times which I urge people to look at. It's one of these beautiful sort of avenue in Paris, which is absolutely in flames, effectively. Rubbish piled high, bin bags piled up to the shop windows. You know, those beautiful boutiques.
Yeah, but when you see those buildings burning down...
There are general strikes, there are transport strikes, refuse strikes. People are angry about all the things that we're angry about, cost of living, the fact that the government don't seem to be helping, energy prices, all of that, living standards plummeting. And in France, they take to the streets, and it is it's a real tin
But
bomb.
isn't this whole... the Gilets jaunes thing, haven't they? Did that do them any good?
No, I'm not saying it does them any good, but there's pent-up anger amongst people, and in France, they go, you know...
Well, they do, but isn't the problem the pandemic? Everyone forgets we've had a world pandemic which has now got to be paid for by by every country.
Got to be paid for. But hang on, remember 1968? They do pretty well on strikes in France, with or without a pandemic. So this is their thing.
Yeah, but I don't like the violence. It's dreadful to see. And it's a beautiful city. But, you know, I said years ago when the French did it, we should block the tunnel. Stop them coming over. You know,
Give over, Pete.
No, when they get violent, I get upset.
What are people supposed to do when they feel powerless? I'm not condoning
What are we supposed to do about the pandemic? Somebody's got to pay for the pandemic. Everyone's forgetting the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point.
Got to be paid for, sadly.
Talking of people coming over, Pete, let's have a look at the Telegraph, Emma. Migrants could be moved to ferries.
Yeah, this is in the Telegraph, and part of Rishi Sunak's, attempt to crack down on migrants coming over, and also to look tough, to talk tough, and to look tough about migrants, asylum seekers coming over. At the moment, the cost of hotels is around £7 million a day. And we know there's been a real focus in many coastal towns, but also just towns generally, for anti-immigration, pro- and anti-immigration protests, and violence broken out around hotels. So Rishi Sunak is proposing early next week to be declaring the end of asylum hotels. Asylum seekers will instead be housed in former military bases and/or ferries. So the plans, I think they were going to be using student accommodation and holiday camps. Those plans have been quietly shelved. But again, then there's protests around the military bases where people don't want migrants. They're not welcome. It's not a welcome influx. It's like gypsies. Nobody wants them in their area. So, we'll see how this one goes. There is concern that £7 million a day. I don't think you can pretend that people are living in luxury.
No.
But four-star country houses on rural estates have been used to house people.
Have we got enough ferries? Because the ferries idea was mooted, raised by people years ago. How many ferries have we got floating
And then you have to staff them, and you have to deal with all the, This is going to be for adult single males, so it won't be families. Let's see if this works. They want to have a deterrent. They want to make people feel that when you come here, it's going to be tough, that it's not going to be... They say it'll be rudimentary but decent accommodation.
You say about the accommodation, and they're not living in beautiful places. They're struggling. But there's an awful lot of people who own those places making a great deal of money out of their hotels that weren't doing well, and they're screwing the system.
Are they, though? It's like...
They're providing accommodation.
What would you do if it's...
at the cost that they want to charge, To
the government, yeah.
Yeah, to the government. To us, because we're paying the government.
Yeah, but what would you do if you're in that situation? You see, it's the think of the pandemic again, Pete. When they've been out of business for several years, and then someone says, well, we'll block book your hotel for the next 12 months.
Yeah, during...
you're just going to say... As a businessman, you're just going to say yes, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely, making money, but, we should look at who is making money out of it.
They are lucrative contracts, though, for these hotel chains, and especially in low season.
Yeah, very lucrative.
But it's not a popular move to fill your hotel with asylum seekers. It's not exactly a winning thing that you put on your website. So I think we have to remember people are struggling, hotels are empty, people aren't really able to afford to go away and things like that. When you say they're making money out of it,
well, a friend of mine's got a hotel in Singapore, and he gave his hotel to the government, and the government have paid for it to go back to the way it was. So he's got a win-win-win-win situation. Right. He's got a brand-new hotel out of it.
What do you make of the ferry idea, Pete?
Of the...
ferry idea and...
I think all these ideas have got to be talked about. There are, they're talking about putting a ferry a cruise ship in the docks of Liverpool for the Eurovision to give extra accommodation. So why not use something to people to live on? It is a minefield, because every suggestion that comes up, there's a group of people out there that knock it. So, but they don't come up with any ideas.
Yeah.
But they should put these people to work, because we need people working.
No, the problem with that is if the idea is if they're out and about in the community in that sense and working, how many people then disappear into the system?
How many people are already disappearing in the system, in our own system?
Yeah.
Pete, should we have a look at something totally different in the Mirror? This is a story about a man who went to Ukraine to get his teeth fixed. But it is this wider issue, isn't it, about the NHS dental crisis?
Well, it's an interesting story. So desperate, went to Ukraine to get my teeth fixed. The dentist patient risked life and limb to go to war-savaged Ukraine. So that's that. It was going to cost him £1,000 for the treatment in this country. That's that. And then he's gone 1,500 miles. He paid £127 for the flight, £54 for the train trip, and then £220 for a lot of treatment he had, draining of his abscess and 3 root canals. What they don't tell you until you read further down is he's got a home over in Ukraine. He knows Ukraine inside out, and it was there for 12 years in the capital. So that it's highlighted the NHS. Fine. What I would say to him is if he'd have come up north, the dentist would have done it. For instance, Claire Sweeney, who's a lovely friend of mine, came up and had a tooth out, £350 in the north of England, £700 in London. Yeah. So he could have got treatment in the country if he wanted to. But it was a trip home. But it highlights the fact that we are stuck for NHS dentists because a lot of them are going into private practice. But parents aren't helping the situation by giving so much sugar to children. Parents are doing so much damage to their own children, and they don't realise how much damage. There's kids of teenagers now, 21, with plates in their mouth because they've got no teeth. Yeah. It's absolutely a minefield.
It is getting worse.
It is getting worse.
And it's, I mean, a parent's not, I mean, it's not just what you eat, it's how you're cleaning as well. A parent's not teaching that properly.
It's a daily battle, actually, to get a 2-year-old to brush their teeth. But it's, you know, it's a really, really important skill. I kind of go back and forth on the NHS dentistry because I was told in central London, I was told, oh, you'll really struggle to get your child registered with a dentist. The lovely dentist across the road instantly registered him.
Oh, wow.
And same with me, you know, I moved from wherever to be at the same dentist as him, and I was surprised that dentists, because I've heard about the queues and the massive long waiting lists. It's not just parents feeding their children sugary food. It's the manufacturers packing our foods with sugar and salt and fat and all the unnecessary additives and all the things that the hidden stuff that we don't know about. So it is difficult to know. You know, you're not actually spooning sugar into a child, and you do see children with a bottle of squash in their pram at sort of six months old. And that's horrific. Or eating a packet of crisps on the way to school.
It's interesting what you say about the dentist, because we had the same discussion about doctors last time we were on.
We did.
Where you couldn't get doctors then. Yeah. You can get doctors, but it's where the area you were in.
It's a postcode lottery, isn't it?
It appears to be. It appears. But you really must look after your teeth. Sorry.
We need a campaign. The government needs to launch a campaign fronted by Pam Ayres.
Pardon?
Yeah, I love that poem. Yeah. I wish I'd looked after my teeth.
Yeah.
But having said that, I remember my nana in Liverpool 20, 30 years ago saying they all had wooden teeth, you know, wooden false teeth by the age of about 20. So let's not pretend that it used to be a golden age.
Oh, no.
Everybody used to have false teeth by the age of about 30.
That's because we never looked after our teeth. Yeah. My mum had 3 sets. They were everywhere.
That's what I mean.
Under the couch, in the cups. Yeah. You'd take your...
Even in middle age.
for a date and say,
my grandma got dentures for her 21st birthday.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly. It was like a big present. It was a big thing.
And, of course, my day, we used to brush our teeth like that. Yeah. So I've got, like, fangs now because my gums are up there, past there.
Bit long in the tooth, Pete, eh?
You keep throwing me with these lines, Stephen.
Well, no, but that's what it means.
I haven't been on for ages. Don't try and put me off.
That's what it means, though, isn't it? Long in the tooth.
Of course it does.
Just being factual, Pete.
Love the soup, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Wish they could see the pockets.
Oh, give over. Now, The Guardian, Emma, looking at Ofsted, in the wake of this head teacher who took her own life.
Yeah. These Ofsted reports, these Ofsted inspections are a bane in the side of, or a thorn in the side of any head teacher. We know that. Is Ofsted fit for purpose? That's the debate at the moment. Is the education watchdog fit for purpose? As a lot of head teachers have come out in the last week or so talking about the brutal Ofsted regime, about the fear and the terror and just the horror of having an inspection looming when the Ofsted inspectors turn up. What makes me so sad about this whole debate is I don't think I hear one mention of children. Surely it should be about the educational standards. Instead, they keep talking about the head teachers, the colleges, you know, whether Ofsted itself. This is all politics. This is all sidelines. What about the children? What about making the schools... Isn't that the point of this?
That's the point of Ofsted.
Yeah, it should be about making it better for children. And you actually very rarely see that focus in all of this coverage.
I agree, but this is off the back of, obviously, the very sad news that this head teacher took her own life. But before the Ofsted result came out, but it was a bad one. But as I was saying yesterday, after talking to the Samaritans years ago about suicide, it's never one issue.
It's never one issue.
It's never one issue. People are saying, well, she took her own life because of Ofsted. That will not be the... It might have been the last straw.
It's not fair to pick on an individual's mental health circumstances in that way and then blow up the whole of Ofsted.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we have to look at this whole government sort of targets culture whereby you say everybody will be seen within 8 hours. Well, what about the care they're getting? Everybody will have an outstanding school. Well, actually, should we look at the schools individually? Should we look at the pupils? Should we actually focus on the education rather than this thing about everybody will be inspected and you will get this grade, because that's what puts pressure on teachers.
It's interesting you mentioned the pupils, Emma. What people forget is that each one of those children is individual, so they've got enough problems working with the children to get them an education without these big brother people on their back.
It's about the adults now, and the pandemic has really wrecked the educational landscape for a lot of children.
But I hate to say it, we've got to leave it there.
What about me what's-name story where I can't use the words?
We'll come back to
Coming back to that.
You can do it next hour.
Yes.
You can do it next hour. Put it higher up the list, Pete, as it were. Thank you both. Now, an internationally renowned teaching hospital in London specialising in cardiac and cancer care is celebrating its 900th anniversary today.
Yes, St Barts NHS is protecting its heritage by undertaking several renovation projects to preserve some of the oldest Grade 1 listed parts of the building. Lisa Hartle went to investigate.
St Barts is Britain's oldest hospital. Founded in 1123, today it's renowned for its work in cancer treatment and heart surgery. Former surgeon gynaecologist to the late Queen, Sir Marcus Setchell, is the deputy chairman of St Barts Heritage, fundraising to preserve the historical parts of the hospital.
They didn't actually have doctors in the early years in 1123. They were really nuns from the priory and nurses, but they weren't qualified nurses. They were carers, basically. But I think its long history is a very important part of it.
A £10 million conservation project is underway as part of the 900th anniversary, restoring items like this William Hogarth painting dating back to the 1730s.
In the 18th century, they started to undertake the first medical procedures, the first operations, which you can imagine at that time was quite a terrifying thing because there wasn't anaesthetic, anything like that. Behind us on Hogarth's painting, you can see a sort of group of figures who represent the patients of the hospital with various diseases and ailments, including a blind man with a stick, and that's a reminder that the hospital had actually appointed its first eye surgeon in 1720. So medical advances were happening, medical education was changing, and from the 18th century onwards, the hospital began to develop into what we really know today as a modern hospital.
Barts is one of the leading heart hospitals in the world. Chief Surgeon Stephen Edmondson has been at St Barts for over 40 years.
But Barts has always had a tradition of excellence. It was very clear to me when I came here that he had that tradition. And it has an illustrious history, but I think we're very now centred and grounded in the here and the now, and we're doing really good work now that's innovative. What we try to do is do the basic stuff extremely well. But the thing that Barts does on top of that is it innovates. So we have specialist programs that sometimes are unique to Barts, and that's been the way, in my role as clinical director, I've tried to develop the service. And I think if there's a single word that typifies Barts, apart from excellence, it is the culture that we have of striving all the time to do the best for our patient.
A breast cancer treatment centre is also being built as part of the 900th anniversary campaign.
We will have surgery from the breast surgeons to the plastic surgeons all on one site so that more challenging breast surgery can be done, for example, doing reconstructions immediately for patients to have choice about what reconstruction they have at the time.
With the preservation and innovation at St Barts, staff hope the iconic hospital will continue to serve generations to come. Lisa Hottle, GB News, London.
That's a remarkable anniversary, actually.
900
Absolutely
years.
stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Loads of you getting in touch this morning on Donald Trump. Paul, morning Paul, says, get the dream team back together. Trump in America, Boris in the UK. Happy days. Jack says, I would be glad to see Trump back. The news was never boring.
That's true.
Which is true.
Steve says, I've just returned from the US, having spent 3 weeks in Florida and Tennessee. I can tell you that Biden and the policies of the last 2 years are causing real pain. The cost of living is rising dramatically, and Donald Trump does have real deep-rooted support, as does DeSantis in Florida. Look at the fools we have running here in the UK. It's a circus, says Steve.
Yeah, well, we always say that about politicians and governments, though, don't we? And they seem to say it in every country.
Yeah.
Saying it in France, they're saying it in the United States, they're probably saying it everywhere. It's the nature of it all, isn't it? Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We've got all your top stories coming up. Bright and breezy at 7 o'clock after your weather.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update for the weekend from the Met Office with me, Annie Shuttleworth. We'll see sunshine and showers throughout today, but overnight tonight we're likely to see some areas seeing a frost. And that's because we're starting to see a bit of a northerly feed coming in across parts of Scotland and northern England through the rest of the day. But this front will bring showers through a lot of the morning and into the afternoon. So showers will be most persistent across southern areas of Scotland, as well as North Wales, northern England and Northern Ireland too. Some of these could be heavy for a time. Further south across parts of Wales and central England, we'll see some sunshine starting to develop into the afternoon, and it's going to feel quite warm in the sunshine, very similar to any sunshine you may have seen throughout Friday. So highs of around 14 or 15 degrees here. However, to the north, notice we're starting to see that quite strong northerly breeze, and that's going to bring a chillier feel and that risk of frost overnight tonight. In the south, though, we'll see the next batch of rain affect parts of southern England as well as parts of South Wales. The rain could turn quite persistent for a time, though there is some uncertainty on the details for this. Further north, though, it will remain dry for many areas with a touch of frost, mainly across northern areas of Scotland. So a bit of a chillier start to Sunday than Saturday, particularly across these northern areas, but a good amount of sunshine lasting well into the afternoon across parts of Scotland and then into northern England, central England by the afternoon. But for all of us, we've got this northerly breeze. It's going to be bringing some snow showers to the north coast of Scotland and a much chillier feel. So temperatures quite a few degrees down on Sunday, and it will feel cool across any North Sea coasts. Staying cool throughout Monday, but we'll see fewer showers around, so a drier and probably a sunnier day than Sunday on Monday. I'll see you later.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister's new Northern Ireland Brexit deal has finally been signed off.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Saturday, the 25th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie. These are your top stories.
The UK and the EU have formally agreed on the new Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland after the government won the backing of MPs for the Windsor Framework earlier this week.
The state visit for King Charles to France has been abandoned after the French president warned it wouldn't be sensible for him to go to the country amid violent protests over pension reform.
And the courtroom drama continues as Gwyneth Paltrow testifies. The Hollywood actress denies that she caused a ski collision between her and another skier in 2016.
Loads of you getting in touch on the big issues of the day. If you want to talk about anything lighter as well, whatever you want to chat about, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Join in the conversation. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Now, Rishi Sunak's Brexit deal for Northern Ireland, the Windsor Framework, sounds very grand, doesn't it? It's been formally signed off.
The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, and the European Commission's Maros Sefcovic finally ratified the agreement after the government won the backing of MPs earlier this week.
Well, let's talk to political commentator Peter Spencer, who's here in the studio. Morning to you, Peter.
Good morning.
Signed, sealed, delivered, but not necessarily without problems to come.
Indeed, sir. I mean, the first problem that springs to mind, of course, is the fact that the Democratic Unionist Party have refused to agree with it, and therefore they're not prepared to re-enter government. And so, to some, that might make the whole thing look like a bit of a Pyrrhic victory, but it is possible that they will come round in time. That's certainly what Downing Street is hoping. It's worth remembering that they've had their pay docked for not doing their work. And also, as politicians, they rather like running things anyway. But also, they will have been seized of the vote which ratified or which confirmed all this, a Commons vote, where it was expected there could well be a big rebellion on the part of Eurosceptics. And in the event, only some 22 Tory MPs came alongside with them. And so basically it didn't happen. It went through very, very easily indeed. And so all of a sudden they're sort of left kind of on their Todd, you know, Johnny no mates, all that stuff.
Well, can I just ask, where does that leave Boris Johnson? Because there was a sense he was really trying to rally the troops on this one and sort of reassert his power.
It's yet another huge, great big pointed stick stuck in his eye, to be perfectly honest. I mean, remember the context of this, that at the very moment that this vote was taking place, he was in the Commons Privileges Committee giving evidence under oath about whether he had deliberately and recklessly misled Parliament over Partygate. And it's also just worth pausing for a moment to consider that here is this man who was, as far as the Tories were concerned, pure gold a couple of years ago when he got them 80-seat majority. Well, he's been transmuted into very base metal because it was what they were discussing was, in the Commons, was the deal that he lashed up, some might say well and truly lashed up, with the European Union over Europe and Northern Ireland's trading arrangements. And so he was leading the charge into the Commons to say, listen, Rishi Sunak's deal is rubbish, mine was the one to go with. And what happened? They did not follow him. He's running very fast, running out of friends, and it could well be that he's run out of road.
Let's have a word on Rishi Sunak, shall we, and the small boats issue, because this is an issue that matters to voters. I think with Labour it's a top 5 issue. With Tory voters it's definitely up there in the top 3. But for Rishi Sunak, he's got a battle on his hands even within his own party, doesn't he? He's got the immigration hardliners who want us to take a tough stance, and then they've got those in his own party who are very concerned about what this means in terms of international law.
Yes, indeed. I mean, when it comes to the voters' concern bit, I mean, yes, sure, it has crept up. All the opinion polls say it has crept up in people's sets of priorities. I'm never quite sure whether that's to do with sort of a widespread terror of marauding hordes charging around the country, or whether they're simply reading more about it in the papers, because migration, of course, involves pinch points in specific areas of the country, but it does not actually change particularly the demographic of the nation. Yeah, when it comes to the matter of sorting out the Tory party with all this, yes, of course, there's all sorts of stuff going on this weekend with the votes coming up on this piece of legislation in the next couple of days, and suggestions that there are going to be amendments put down to try to prevent judges from in any way enabling asylum seekers to avoid deportation. But then on the other side of the argument, yes, of course, there is a fairly widespread concern within the Conservative backbenches that this actually does breach international law, which actually I have to say the Home Secretary has acknowledged might well be the case, and doesn't do a lot for our reputation. So on their side, they're saying, look, for God's sake, look, you know, if you're going to go with this legislation, at least present us with some legal route for people to get in this country if they really are escaping terror and persecution.
I tell you what, whatever's going on in this country, it looks worse in France at the minute, doesn't it? With these, I mean, we're calling them protests still. I mean, they're in part riots, aren't they? And it's resulted in the King obviously cancelling that visit. Well, Macron's cancelled the visit, but quite right. What do you make of this? Will from Worthing. I don't know how you are in your international politics, Peter. Well, you'd be very good, I know. Are the French people so wrong to refuse to accept policies forced upon them that they don't want and didn't vote for? As Jacob Rees-Mogg quotes on your channel, Vox Populi, Vox Dei, which I think means the voice of the people is the voice of God. I think.
It is indeed, and that's certainly what Macron is thinking at this moment. I mean, the French people do have a certain form when it comes to muscularity. I mean, consider 1066 and all that. Indeed, my own French great-grandfather got the Légion d'honneur for slaughtering English people.
Oh, right. Well, yeah.
But sure, I mean, it's... You mentioned the title of the Windsor Framework. It was actually rather gorgeously choreographed to that extent, or was meant to be, in that, you know, there was the King coming along to put the royal seal of approval on this new era of relations between Britain and the European Union, notably France, after the rather more up-yours approach from Boris Johnson, even more so from Liz Truss. And if you remember her, yeah.
Just about.
And of course, it's been pushed off course, hasn't it? And I mean, it doesn't change the fact that the New Deal has been ratified, but sort of the glorious choreography has rather gone askew. And I mean, let's face it, you know, these protesters have burned down the place where they were going to have dinner. Well, you know, he's the King, for God's sake. You can hardly send him straight to bed with no tea.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Do you think it's right that it was postponed then, for security reasons?
Well, I don't think he had any choice no matter whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter, good to see you this morning. Always a joy. Thank you very much indeed.
Merci, monsieur.
Oh, that won't go down very well. Good old English. Do you imagine French is a beautiful language?
Yes, it is. I enjoyed your... both of your little renditions.
Oh, that was my
Latin. A little bit
Latin.
of French. Oh, that was your Latin,
That's
yeah.
Latin.
Well, I enjoyed the Latin as well.
Vox Populi, Vox Dei. But at least I managed to, according to Peter, I was right.
Yeah, no,
good.
very good translation. Very good.
There you go. The only Latin I really know is Dum tempus habemus, which was the motto at my school, Dowdale's Comp, which means whilst we have time.
Oh.
Which actually I thought was a very good motto for a school.
Well, what does that mean, then? Well, whilst we have time...
It means to learn.
Oh, to learn.
So while you have time to learn, learn.
Do it. Focus your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's quite good for a school, isn't it?
Yeah, you've
Quite
just
good.
failed the entrance exam.
I didn't get in.
It was a comp. It was no entrance exam there. Anyway,
Oh, dear.
your thoughts on all of that? Let us know.
Yes, Dave from Birmingham says Macron's attitude is from the 18th century. He sees himself as a golden toad and the masses as frogs.
I don't quite get that. I don't quite understand that analogy.
But it's the whole Marie Antoinette, isn't it? In this Palace of Versailles, and he was going to be with King Charles having dinner. I mean, it's what the French are saying. It's what many of the French are saying, aren't they? That Macron is up with his lovely watch on. That's in the front of the Daily Mail. Yes,
Which is where you were going with
wearing
that
wearing a very expensive watch, and he removes it halfway through an interview. And his team have said it was because the watch was banging against the table, but the left wing party in France is saying actually.
Because it was
It was
worth
a very, very expensive
£20,000.
and he's out of touch, is what they're saying. So,
Nice to
yes.
have a nice watch if you can afford it.
Mm.
It is 10 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the other headlines this morning.
And security guards at Heathrow will strike over Easter after talks over pay have failed. The airport says it has contingency plans in place to deal with Unite's 10-day walkout and keep it running as normal. Heathrow says it's offered workers a 10% pay rise.
Oscar winner Gwyneth Paltrow has testified in court, denying she caused a collision between her and another skier in 2016. Terry Sanderson wants $300,000 in damages after being left what he says are life-changing injuries. However, Paltrow has countersued for $1, as well as reimbursement of legal fees.
Servicemen who helped carry the Queen's coffin in Edinburgh are among those recognised in an honours list. The Royal Regiment of Scotland carried the coffin to St Giles's Cathedral to lie and rest. The Chief Steward of the cathedral also received honours under the Royal Victorian Order, recognising service to the monarch.
St Giles's is a funny old cathedral.
Is it?
It is, because it doesn't look anything much from the outside. It doesn't look particularly grand or anything from the outside.
Does it not?
No, and
then
there's a little square in front of it, and then it's just sort of flat-fronted, and it doesn't particularly look anything impressive at all. And then you get inside, and it is stunning.
Is it?
It's really,
Quite
really
like that,
stunning.
though. It's the surprise element, surprise factor.
Really is lovely. And at the far end, by the altar and everything is very sort of old and traditional, if you like. And then towards the door end, there's like the ceiling's all been redone and is all in blues and golds. And
Oh, lovely.
it is
We must
really lovely.
pay a visit.
Well, I've just been. I'm not going again.
OK.
You
I
go.
must make a visit.
But it's really lovely. If you're ever up in Edinburgh, definitely pop in.
Yeah.
It's worth seeing.
I mean, the Eyes of the Wild were on it, weren't they, for several days?
Oh, weren't
and
they
it
just, yeah.
really was just remarkable. And I
Yeah.
think it's great that those pallbearers are being recognised as well. I think they really did us proud. Because there was a lot of pressure on that moment, a moment in history. The Eyes of the World on them, and they did us proud. I remember thinking that at the time.
And young men doing that, it's a lot of pressure.
Amazing. Can I have a word on Gwyneth Paltrow?
Oh, go on.
Please, because, you know, this case about her allegedly being in a hit-and-run accident on a ski slope in Utah. Well, you wouldn't want to ski in the US. It's like the laws of the road are there.
Oh, really?
You know, so as Stephanie Tetchy, our entertainment reporter, was saying yesterday, if you're further down the hill, you have the right of way, and if you crash into them, then you're liable for any injuries they might sustain.
Right.
I'd worry about myself, I would, because when I go skiing, I crash into everybody.
Oh, right. Oh,
Not intentionally, but just...
I've never been skiing.
Have you not?
No.
No, well, I do ski, but not very well. But I crash into people all the time. I wouldn't want to be liable for their injuries.
Yeah.
But in the US, it is very, very strict like that. Stephanie Tetchy is going to be here later talking to us about the latest in this.
Tell you what puts me off is all these accidents. I mean, there's an accident there. Schumacher was a skiing accident, wasn't it? Liam Neeson's wife,
Natasha.
she died in that skiing accident.
She did.
And that was in Canada, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's very.
It all
Natasha
sounds a bit.
Richardson, yeah.
It all sounds a bit awful, doesn't it?
Well, it's dangerous. It is dangerous. Natasha Richardson, yeah.
2009,
that was very
is that
sad,
long
wasn't
ago?
it? Yeah, she died in a ski accident. Yeah, so Stephanie Tetchy will be here with the latest on that. Gwyneth Paltrow was actually in the dock yesterday. Remarkable, really. She'll have the update on that, giving evidence, yeah.
And I just want to tell you about biscuits, because we like to. Margaret from Wells says, I always buy branded biscuits. However, in one supermarket, their own brand of ginger nuts were 50p and the branded ones were £1.50. My hubby says they were as good as the branded ones.
Very good with the not saying the brand.
Not saying the brands there. But that's the way, I think that's the way we've all got to go now.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, we'll say you can't, you know, there's that very famous slogan, there's some brands it has to be, you know, it can't be anything else.
Yeah, one or two.
There's a few that you'd have to pay the big bucks for.
One or two.
But where you can,
but
you
see,
try and be sensible.
If enough people do that, it'll force the big brands to reduce their prices.
That's true.
So there you go. Let us know
Maybe
what you
do
think.
a little protest.
Yeah, biscuit protest. That's very British. Now, the head of the FBU, the Fire Brigades Union, is calling for mass non-cooperation and non-compliance with the government's new anti-strike clause.
Yes, the minimum services level bill would force certain union members in key sectors to work on strike days or face losing their jobs.
Well, the FBU's General Secretary says the bill is one of the most draconian attacks on the rights of working people in decades.
Well, let's speak now to firefighter and trade union activist Paul Embry. Good morning to you, Paul. Great to have you on the programme. So let's get your reaction then to that new law on minimum levels of service during strikes. Why don't you want to see it come into place?
Well, good morning, Ali, Stephen. Very simply because I think that the right to withdraw one's labour is actually a hallmark of a civilised society and a society which respects the basic rights of its citizens. And, you know, the truth is that we already in this country have some of the most restrictive trade union laws in Europe. And what this bill would mean, effectively, is that where an individual votes for strike action and where a union collectively votes to take strike action in a democratic ballot, a majority of members have voted for that action, then the government can effectively still force some of those workers to cross picket lines. Now, anybody who's been involved in the trade union movement, as I have for many years, knows what a cardinal sin it's seen in the movement to cross a picket line and to basically force workers to cross picket lines which are being manned by their colleagues. A, I think it is completely unprincipled and unethical, and B, I just don't think it would work. The idea that workers are going to be strong-armed into breaking a strike that they've voted for, I think is just fanciful. So in the end, I think this bill, it certainly is a backward bill, and it's going to inflame the situation and, in my view, make the strife even worse.
I totally get what you're saying, Paul. It's a bit of a curveball, though, but what about those people? Couldn't it be used in a positive way? But there must always be people who end up going on strike but don't want to, for whatever reason. Maybe they don't agree with it, maybe they just want to keep making the money, you know, which is fair enough. But as you say, crossing the picket line is such a cardinal sin that obviously they wouldn't be able to do it. Well, doesn't it give those people an opportunity to actually keep working if they choose to? And at least they've got an excuse to do it.
Well, I mean, the truth is, Stephen, if people are not in the union in the first place, then they wouldn't have taken part in that ballot. They wouldn't have at the moment, the legal protections in terms of taking industrial action. So many of those people, I imagine, would decide to work anyway. What we're talking about here is people who are members of the union and people who have taken part in a democratic ballot and may well, in line with other members in the union, have voted for strike action and being forced to cross picket lines. Now, As I said, A, it's a completely unethical thing to do, but B, it strikes me as a bit like the government is acting the role in a boxing match where somebody's kind of getting hit and then decides to change the rules halfway through and say, actually, I want my opponent to fight with one hand tied behind his back because he's being a bit too effective and he's landing a few too many blows. I think that's what's happening at the moment because the government has been stung by the effectiveness of many of the strikes. Then instead of saying, well, hold on a second, what do we need to do to resolve these strikes? They seem to be taking a much more militant approach, saying, well, how can we change the rules halfway through? How can we stop these people from fighting back in the way that they're doing? And as I say, what it's going to do ultimately is just make the situation worse and probably lead to more strikes. And I don't think the government has properly considered that.
I mean, the government would say that they recognise the want of workers and unions to negotiate over fair pay, but they would also say that they need to protect the public when it comes to relying on services such as the fire brigade. They want the public to be confident that during strike action they can call for an ambulance or the fire brigade and they would be there. Essentially, they want to keep the public safe.
I don't think you resolve these things by interfering with people's basic rights. And as I said, the right to withdraw one's labour is one of those basic rights. And I don't doubt that there's huge disruption and inconvenience going on at the moment, but you don't turn yourself effectively into an authoritarian state in order to resolve that. You look at the bigger picture and think, well, hold on a second, why is it that so many workers, many of whom have never taken strike action before, are suddenly taking to picket lines? It's because of the economic landscape that they're in, the fact that we've got the tightest wage squeeze in this country since Napoleonic times, the fact that people are seeing constantly their real wages falling, the fact that people are struggling to make ends meet and pay their mortgages and energy bills. And the government needs to say, well, how do we address that? We don't take the big stick approach. We need to resolve this by giving people decent pay. And it seems to me that the government hasn't tried that hard enough. In some sectors, it's working where the government has shown a bit of flexibility. And I would urge them to actually take that same approach right throughout the sector rather than trying to force people to cross picket lines.
OK, Paul, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sure you've got a view on that. What is interesting, and certainly from our People's poll that we've been running from a couple of months ago, was this legislation was not proving popular with voters, interestingly. People are fed up with the strikes, but they don't necessarily think this is the right legislation, according to our poll. So let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got an opinion on that one. Now, only a fifth of young adults are saving for a deposit on a house. That's next, just 2 minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
£7.25, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. We were talking about petrol prices earlier on. Richie's been in touch saying, I can remember the 70s, petrol costing 50p a gallon. Happy days, you can't beat the 70s. Or you can. Everything was brown and orange in the 70s.
What do you mean?
I just remember everything, like carpets were brown and orange and sofas were all brown, and I used to wear little brown and orange trousers and things.
Did you really?
Oh, awful. I used to have a bowl cut.
Wow. I would pay good money to see that. You got a picture of your bowl cut and your brown and orange trousers?
I've got a picture of the bowl cut.
OK. I'll hold you to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, it wasn't.
It's not quite the glory days.
No.
In your memory, anyway.
It sort of depends how old you are, Richie, I guess. But to me, it's just a blur of orange and brown.
How old are you in the 70s?
I was born in 74.
Oh, there you go. You're barely born.
So I was a fresh one.
You were fresh in the 70s. Talking about France and King Charles's visit being postponed, he was meant to go tomorrow. Mike says, what no one seems to mention is the French have some of the most generous, if not the most generous, social security payments in Europe, and the pension would still be the best after the changes. And that is interesting, actually, because I was looking at retirement age across Europe. In France, it's actually the lowest in Europe.
And it would still be the lowest, even when,
still be the lowest by
when it up
a country
to 2
mile,
years,
yes. So Italy at 67, Netherlands 66, UK 66, Spain and Belgium are 65. So France at 62 is still very...
According to that, it says the Netherlands is actually 66.8 years.
Right. How do they work that one out?
That's odd, isn't it?
Very, very interesting.
There you go.
So, yeah, let us know what you make of that. The French protesting.
What's ours?
66.
66, is that what it is?
I think that will go up as well, don't you?
Yes, I think it probably will.
Yep, let us know what you make of that. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
People have been messaging me that working in old age, like dearest Stephen, says Chrissy, seems to be the politicians think the population works sitting at a desk. Do they realise many of the population works a manual job and that some folk can't do their manual job into old age?
Yep.
Which, again, is an absolute fair point. But just let me clarify, although I was saying I understand the principle, I do not want to keep working way into my old age. I absolutely do not.
You'd like an early retirement,
I would like an early retirement. I'd like to go at 60. Whether that's going to be remotely possible or not is another kettle of fish, but I would like to go at 60.
Yeah. What do you think I'll be stuck to by the time I get to it?
85.
It will be about 85. I'll still be here.
Yeah.
85.
You won't look any different. You have work done and all sorts.
I'll have it all.
Yeah. Anyway. Now, young people, of which I am not, appear to be abandoning hope of becoming homeowners, with more people aged between 25 and 34 saying they're putting away money for a holiday instead of a deposit.
Yes, despite property prices losing some ground in recent months, the cost of living has remained high and young people are becoming disillusioned with the house buying dream. We're joined now by finance expert Kevin Mountford. Good morning to you, Kevin. So first of all, your reaction to this. Young people appear to be losing hope in ever being homeowners. Why is that?
Yes, the research we've recently carried out at Raisin has some worrying trends when it comes to savings. On one hand, savings rates are maybe the highest they've been for the last decade, but equally the cost of a mortgage and other borrowing products is maybe risen even higher. And then if you add to that the cost of living rises, then for a lot of young people, either they're not able or they just can't be bothered to save up for a property. They just feel that it's out of their reach. And as you say, that age group, around about 1 in 4 now, are choosing to spend any savings on the likes of a holiday.
Kevin, you threw it in there very subtly, but there's a substantial difference, isn't there, between being not able to save for a deposit and not being bothered to save for a deposit. I mean, they're two very different things.
They are, and we have been a nation of homeowners, and the research showed that now 1 in 7 are saying that they plan to rent now forever. And that, as I say, has a worrying trend, because clearly the economy is very much based or helped by the fact that we do have this continual cycle of buying and selling properties. But I think when I say that they can't be bothered, as I say, it feels that it's out of reach. As you were saying at the start, house prices have softened. The average house price across the UK is nearly £300,000. So even if you're looking to build up a 5% deposit, that's around about 15,000, plus all the associated costs that go with a house buying.
And an element of this, especially at the moment, is even if you can afford to save up for that hefty deposit, and it can be, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds in some cases, then these young people are not on salaries that would allow them to pay a mortgage because the interest rates are so high.
Yes, and there has been changes over recent years around the mortgage industry, and affordability is a key element. And as I say, if we've got more young people renting, unfortunately, when it comes down to your ability to pay, or even intent to pay, then that rental cost isn't taken into account. It's more around your income. And as you said, that the rate of income increase, and we've just been hearing about that with one of your earlier guests, isn't keeping pace. And we've just seen now 12 consecutive interest rate rises. And from a saver's point of view, that's been a positive. But from a borrowing point of view, it's a real challenge. In fact, a lot of the younger people that we'd have spoken to, it wasn't that long ago, they'd be seeing interest rates sub 1%. And now they're over 4%. So I think it's the shock of that. And on top of it, the realisation that they need to save up a considerable amount of money. And a lot of people still have the money with the big banks, and they're just not paying the level of interest on savings to the extent that they're putting up borrowing rates.
What support do young people need to get on the property ladder?
So over the years, there's been a variety of things. There's likes of a lifetime ISA. There's Help to Buy, share ownership schemes. And let's face it, we've all relied on bank of mum and dad and grandparents over the years. So I think there's been lots of initiatives. But I think if this trend continues, as I say, there's a knock-on impact on the economy. And so I think industry and government is likely to have to put their heads together again and try and think of new initiatives, because it's not a trend that we want to continue to see. In the UK, as I say, unlike a lot of other countries, we are a nation of homeowners. It's a small island, lots of people, not enough property. So there's always that supply and demand that continues to boost property prices.
OK. Kevin Mountford, really good to have you on the programme this morning.
It's interesting.
Thank you. Have a great day.
And you. If you're a young person, or even if you are a bank of mum and dad or grandma and granddad, And you've got thoughts on that, GB Views at gbnews.uk.
It is extortionate. I mean, 8% for some mortgages now, 8% rates. A lot of money. Let us know what you make of that. Now, all the news and views are coming up after this short break. We've got the papers with Emma Wolf and Pete Price.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:37, good morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's take a look at today's front pages for you now. And in the Express this morning, attention is drawn to King Charles's state visit to France being postponed amid pension protests in the capital, but also all around France.
Yes, indeed. The Eye has that as well, but also say that the King wants to heal Britain's Brexit wounds.
The Times, again, leads with King Charles's first state visit being postponed after President Macron warned it would become the target of an escalating nationwide revolt in France.
The Mail also gives a front page over to that.
The Daily Telegraph does the same. It says the UK reset with the EU is in disarray after King Charles's state visit to France was cancelled.
The Mirror has a man with toothache who went to Ukraine to get it fixed.
And finally, the front stage of The Star leads with baguettes being blamed for a global wind pandemic. Say that much.
OK, let's go through those with writer and columnist Emma Wolfe and radio presenter Pete Price, and all-round entertainer, actually, Pete Price, should say, which is true. Can we have a look at the Mail, please, Emma? Arctic conditions forecast, despite it being spring.
Yeah, well...
More like a weather story.
I love a weather story, and apparently February was really, really dry, and March has been sort of drizzly and sleety, and yesterday there was mad weather, wasn't there? There were sort of hailstones and all sorts.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, there were hailstones. In the middle of the afternoon.
Loads of rain. Yeah.
There was a lot of mad weather and a crack of thunder, which I literally thought was going to sort of rip open the heavens. Apparently, we're not into spring yet. We can't relax yet. Gardeners shouldn't relax yet. There's an Arctic blast on the way. Temperatures are going to be as low as -5 in some towns in the north in the coming week. And so we're sort of not out the woods. I think we need some spring. I think we've had a long, hard winter. Lots of us just want... And the thing is, the cherry blossom is out, the magnolia are out, all of that is there.
That's all happening, yeah.
But then it all gets blown away in these Arctic...
It's interesting, the whole world's gone mad. I've not long been back from Las Vegas and it snowed.
Did it?
I took all the wrong clothes, had to go out and buy clothes. I was absolutely freezing to death. But it has gone mad. But I didn't think it's been that bad a winter. I think it's been... Mind you, where I live, on the Wirral, it's very, very mild because Liverpool's higher and Wales is higher and we're down a bit and we seem to get better weather than anybody else.
By the sea.
And by the sea as well, so we get the salt coming.
Yeah, you do. It always keeps it milder, doesn't it? Because the water acts as a sort of temper. Talking of which, Pete, in the Mirror, Liverpool has been voted as one of the best places to live.
Can't believe this.
No surprise there.
No, I thought we were going to talk about the other thing. You're determined not to talk about that.
We will, in a minute.
Yes, I am so excited, I can't tell you. Liverpool is buzzing beyond belief with the Eurovision. It is just... Millions of people are going to descend on Liverpool, and I'm working for 10 days around Liverpool with it. But what is really good about this, Liverpool already is buzzing about it, but they've now been said, they've said it's one of the best places to live in the country, which is great. Now, Toxteth, we remember the Toxteth riots. It was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Now it's a vibrant community, it's fabulous, and there's wonderful parks around there. And also we've got Waterloo, which is known for its restaurants now and bars, and we've got the Anthony Gormley statues. Honestly, Liverpool is alive. 2008 was when Liverpool changed, when we had the capital culture, we had some very dark days with some very bad governments, and it was awful. But now it's buzzing, and we've got a fantastic new Everton Stadium being built on the waterfront. We've got a fabulous film studios being built. Oh yes, so many people come to Liverpool because of those beautiful buildings like St George's Hall and the Town Hall. We're America all the time. I mean, roads are blocked off all the time with filmmaking. I cannot tell you how exciting it is. And then the Eurovision, save all those kisses for me.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is a great city, and it's lovely to see it having a resurgence, I think. It's been forgotten about for too long.
And, of course, people don't realise the Eurovision is 10 days leading up and about 5 days afterwards. It's not just one day.
Yeah, it's a 2-week thing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And it will be showcasing itself to the world, won't it?
It will indeed. It will indeed.
Fabulous.
And we had Elton John there last night at M&S, so the M&S Arena, so you can't do better than that. Yeah, it's been postponed and brought back. So he was there again on his world tour, which is 17 years long. But I love him. I love it. And I had the bed made up for him, and he didn't come and stay. Very upset.
Oh, well, maybe next time.
Oh, dear. Emma, let's have a look at the Mail, shall we? And this is putting clocks an hour forward, which is what's going to happen tonight. We're apparently giving in to the nanny state.
Yeah, well, I mean, people have quite strong feelings about clocks going forward and back, don't they? I always get completely confused about whether we spring forward or leap back or fall back or whatever. Anyway, we're going forward tomorrow at 1 a.m, which means we all get an hour less in bed.
It's 2, isn't it? 2 o'clock.
Oh, I thought it was 1 o'clock.
But then 1:59.
Oh, 1:59, and then we go back to 1:59.
No, we go back to 1.
12.
No, we go to 3. No, we go to 3. Don't we?
Anybody watching is going to be so confused.
I thought it was 1 a.m., but you're right, they go forward, so this back is wrong, it's forward. So we get an hour less in bed or whatever we're doing.
Yeah, they spring
Does anybody know why it
forward.
happens? Because I don't know why.
It's daylight saving time.
But what's that got to do with anything?
So it means when it goes... It makes it lighter in the evening. No, it makes it lighter.
Lighter in the evening, yes. Earlier tea times and then darker in the mornings.
Yeah.
Well,
why?
but the mornings are getting so light that isn't... Oh.
But why in the Stone Age? They never said, I'll put the clocks... Man, they didn't have clocks.
No.
If you let me explain...
Was it originally for the farmers?
I think it was for... And also in the north, where they get so little light in the evenings. I don't know. But David Rooney, who was a former curator of timekeeping at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, is saying that this is effectively like nanny statism. The government is telling us, effectively telling us, it's being used as an instrument of moral discipline and telling us when to go to bed and when to get up.
Right.
And he's quite exercised about this. People do get really quite wound up about this. I mean, is it really necessary? Could we not ditch the October and the March forward and back... clock forward and back then?
Every year, when I did my late-night radio, which was over 45 years, I had the argument with my bosses saying...
About doing an extra hour.
Are you going to pay me for this extra hour every year? I did it. Never worked.
And with a kid, it's a nightmare. Babies get really sensitive to time change, and you end up with either an exhausted baby or one that wants to go to bed, but it's way too early. So it's not good for anyone.
Do you think we should do away with it?
Yes. Let's have a normal life like the Stone
Ban the
Age.
clock change. Why would you support it?
Well, because I think it has its uses. But also, bear in mind, the rest of the world does it.
Does that make it right?
Why do they need to do it?
Well, for the same reasons we do, presumably. But so we're going to go... So if we don't change our time... We're used to Europe being an hour ahead and New York being 5 hours behind. So if we don't change it, then suddenly tomorrow morning we'll be on the same time and Europe's going to be 2 hours ahead.
It's a minefield.
It is
I just think the evenings get light anyway. By midsummer, it's light until 10 o'clock in the evening. So we don't need to do this.
And there's
it's
always
very confusing.
And there's always one clock you haven't changed, and you go, oh no.
That's true.
There's one clock
the microwave and the oven, and you just think, you know what? I'll leave it to catch up with itself a year later.
OK, Pete. The time has come.
Right. I will not use that word that you don't want.
No.
And I won't. Now, I've got some words to pick from. I've got toot, breaking wind, let off or pass gas.
Yes.
Which one do you want me to use?
Toot.
Toot, all right. So, there's angry bakers are fuming at the growing craze of uncooked baguettes, which they say are causing a world tooting epidemic. Now, apparently this idea of the half-baked idea has come from America. So they're coming out.
Lots of ideas from America are half-baked, to be fair.
Yes, but there's nothing wrong with a good passing of wind. I mean, it's healthy, isn't it?
You were going to focus on the baguettes, and instead
apparently Macron's very worried about it because it's happening in France. I think he's got bigger things to worry about.
Are we not cooking? So when we get these half-baked things, are we not cooking them properly?
No, because the Americans say they're better not crusty, they're better just half-baked.
Right.
So, which is... bizarre.
It's a cultural thing. The French bakers are up in arms because they like to do their baguettes really quite crusty.
Yeah.
And they're being asked, even in France, they're being asked, because people are getting used to, like, white bread, processed bread, they're being asked to, like, leave them not so cooked. So not 26 minutes in the oven, it's sort of 21 or something.
Good grief.
And then this is causing...
And also, if they're too crisp, you actually have got to watch your teeth. You can break a tooth on bread.
Yeah.
They're quite hard.
They're quite hard. But I think it's very healthy to toot. I think it's toot.
Well, look...
It's dreadful in panto
well, I'm not...
when you've got a radio mic on.
Yeah.
It's just...
In private, yes. In public, no.
No, not in public, no.
Oh, no, not in public, but, you know, have a baguette at home and toot away.
They'll be wanting us to give up sprouts next. And
Sprouts?
Baby.
Do you know what? I had a friend, bless him, had a colostomy bag, and it was trial and error what they could eat, and they went, never again with sprouts. Never again with sprouts.
Oh, you've just ruined Brussels sprouts for me forever.
I love Brussels sprouts.
Oh, you must pass wind when you eat sprouts, for goodness sake. You must.
Don't think we need to talk about it this hour in the morning.
This is when the biggest tooting goes on.
Well, as my mother used to say when I was growing up, You made a rude noise.
Rude
noise. So we try not to make a rude noise.
And of course, if it happens in your house, you always blame the dog. That dog again.
I know, I do that. I haven't got a dog.
Not yet, anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Save that when you do.
Anyway, on that note, get out. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on. Now, this week, the Office for National Statistics revealed that inflation is climbing higher, despite the government's stated mission to halve it by the end of this year.
Our South East of England reporter Ray Addison went to Horsham in West Sussex to find out how people and businesses are coping.
The place that I am seeing the cost of living the most is when I go to the supermarket and I cannot believe what a basket of groceries costs me. Food is really sky high.
Almost all prices up.
I just can't get over how expensive it is these days. So, yeah, I'm feeling it.
The cost of living is on the rise again. UK inflation jumped unexpectedly last month, with food prices at their highest rate for more than 45 years, hitting consumers struggling to pay their bills. Mohammed Arshad runs Noor Cash and Carry in Horsham. He says customers are wrestling with the increase.
They are trying, the people. At the moment, the too much price is high price. We are buying too much on high price. The people, when they're buying, they're checking the prices has gone up. It's too much effect on the sale. The people coming less in the store. We try to sell, to convince the people, but they're saying the price is too much everywhere. People can't survive in this condition.
One positive amid the price hikes is an overall fall in the price of motor fuel. The annual price dropped to 4.6% in February from 7.7% the month before.
Yeah, I was really impressed actually. Last week when I fueled up, I was like, wow, this is really helping.
The feeling is better now. It's good.
I'm probably saving maybe £40 or something from the peak to now.
James Harris runs haulage company HGS Southern. His 7 lorries use 60,000 litres of diesel every month. At the price peak, that was costing him £36,000, but that's now fallen to £26,000.
We're always going to be positive about a decrease in costings. It means we can expand, we can go further afield, and we don't have to be on the edge of our seat so much.
However, for some competitors, the price fall has been too late.
We've seen multiple companies now failing. I've had friends that have had companies that they've had to shut down because it's just not feasible. We're surviving, but now the fuel prices have come down a little bit. It helps.
Although there are clearly some positives, the latest interest figures show the cost of living crisis is far from over for many British households and businesses. Ray Addison, GB News.
Now, we've been reporting this morning how the King is not going to France.
Yes.
Apparently it's because President Macron says it's not safe enough at the moment, which would seem like a fair point. I'm not convinced it's the truth.
Are you not?
No,
Why?
I think it's because of this. Have a look at this. This is the new waxwork of the King at the Musée Gravin in Paris. Looks nothing like him.
Quelle horreur.
So he won't be happy.
No.
Will he?
Well, I wouldn't be happy with that. Doesn't look like him.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So I think that's why the King said, no, I'm not going.
It was his own protest.
I think so.
Do you know who I think that looks like?
Oh.
Alec Baldwin.
Oh, it does a bit. I mean, there is a look of him. It's like he's gone through...
Let me see.
It looks like he's gone through a lot of Instagram filters.
If you squint...
You can just about, yeah.
You kind of make him out. Yeah, it's Alec Baldwin, sorry.
But apparently, he's in a jacket and kilt. He stands near an equally unconvincing model of the Queen.
Oh, dear.
So there you go.
So you think he's doing his own protest? He's had enough?
I think he said no to that one. There you go, just my thoughts.
Well, lots of you getting in touch on King Charles's France visit being postponed. Sheila says, I support the French protest, not necessarily their actions. We have one of the highest retirement age in the UK and it's not productive. People are living longer. They're not living without illness or health issues. I know I couldn't do the job I did 5 years ago and I'm healthy, thank goodness. It just means people have to take more time off work or go long-term sick.
Need to just...
Yeah.
Yes.
But as we were just hearing from Emma Wolf, it's not all about pension age. I mean, obviously, that's where this has started from, but there's just a lot of angry people in France who are angry about the same things that we are, you know, cost of living and cost of fuel, inflation. I mean, angry people on the streets. And there are some anarchists as well who, I must say, look like they're enjoying themselves as well.
It's always the way. Marion's been in touch. Hi, Marion. My father, Marcel, is French, but he lives in the UK. He's 78 years old, a security guard, gets up at 4 a.m. at home, at home at 8, works 5 days a week. And Marion says, I will not retire. I like to work, to serve, to volunteer. It's a mindset and an attitude. My friend Sybil, who is probably watching right now because she's up at bright and early every day, she's 81, nearly 81, and she works every 5 days a week.
Wow.
Well,
So it keeps you young, doesn't it? Keeps your mind active.
I suppose it does.
Yeah. Keep those views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We've got all the top stories heading your way in just a few minutes after a look at the weather for you.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update for the weekend from the Met Office with me, Annie Shuttleworth. We'll see sunshine and showers throughout today, but overnight tonight we're likely to see some areas seeing a frost. And that's because we're starting to see a bit of a northerly feed coming in across parts of Scotland and northern England through the rest of the day. But this front will bring showers through a lot of the morning and into the afternoon. So showers will be most persistent across southern areas of Scotland, as well as North Wales, Northern England and Northern Ireland too. Some of these could be heavy for a time. Further south, across parts of Wales and central England, we'll see some sunshine starting to develop into the afternoon, and it's going to feel quite warm in the sunshine, very similar to any sunshine you may have seen throughout Friday. So highs of around 14 or 15 degrees here. However, to the north, notice we're starting to see that quite strong northerly breeze, and that's going to bring a chillier feel and that risk of frost overnight tonight. In the south, though, we'll see the next batch of rain affect parts of southern England as well as parts of South Wales. The rain could turn quite persistent for a time, though there is some uncertainty on the details for this. Further north, though, it will remain dry for many areas with a touch of frost, mainly across northern areas of Scotland. So a bit of a chillier start to Sunday than Saturday, particularly across these northern areas, but a good amount of sunshine lasting well into the afternoon across parts of Scotland and then into northern England, central England by the afternoon. But for all of us, we've got this northerly breeze. It's going to be bringing some snow showers to the north coast of Scotland and a much chillier feel. So temperatures quite a few degrees down on Sunday, and it will feel cool across any North Sea coasts. Staying cool throughout Monday, but we'll see fewer showers around, so a drier and probably a sunnier day than Sunday on Monday. I'll see you later.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister's Northern Ireland Brexit deal has finally been signed off.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 25th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, the UK and EU have formally agreed on the new Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland after the government won the backing of MPs for the Windsor Framework earlier this week.
King Charles's state visit to France has been abandoned after the French president warned it wouldn't be sensible for him to go to the country amid violent protests over pension reforms.
And the courtroom drama continues as Gwyneth Paltrow testifies, the actress denying she caused a collision between her and another skier 7 years ago.
And as ever, you can join in any of our discussions this morning by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
So let's start with the news that Rishi Sunak's Brexit deal for Northern Ireland, the Windsor Framework, has now been signed off.
Yes, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly and the European Commission's Maros Sefcovic finally ratified the agreement after the government won the backing of MPs earlier this week.
Well, let's talk to our political reporter, Catherine Forster, who's here. Catherine, good morning to you. So, I mean, it's a significant milestone, isn't it? But it doesn't mean the problems in Northern Ireland, either with Brexit or with the administration, are over.
No, absolutely not. But it has been a good week for Rishi Sunak, hasn't it? And in fact, he's had a few good weeks now, and they're beginning to think that they might just have a chance at the next election. But certainly, although it is, most people would agree, even Jeffrey Donaldson, leader of the DUP, and the DUP, of course, voted against it on Wednesday, the Windsor Framework is a big step forward from the protocol that it replaced, in that it will reduce checks, it will reduce a lot of the oversight from the EU and make goods travelling from mainland Britain to Northern Ireland those checks much less onerous. But fundamentally, it doesn't change the problem that there is no devolved government in Northern Ireland. There is no power sharing back up and running because the Democratic Unionist Party still think that it's not good enough, and they want wanted, it's not happening, the government to go back to the EU and say, let's go back to the drawing board.
What is it that the DUP are not happy about? Is it that there is still a sliver, and it is a sliver of influence that the EU could have over Northern Ireland?
Well, fundamentally, there was always a problem, wasn't there, as soon as the UK voted for Brexit? How do we have a meaningful Brexit that allows us to diverge and do our own thing without having a hard border on the island of Ireland? So Northern Ireland is still in the European Union single market, and so the European Union does still have some oversight, and their particular issue is the Stormont break that has been much talked about, and Rishi Sunak has said, you know, this is fabulous, this can block and stop EU law. The DUP is saying, well, hang on a minute, we've looked at this closely, and actually this is only under very exceptional circumstances and isn't really usable. So there's a war of words, isn't there, going on between the government trying to paint this as a fabulous solution and the DUP saying, no, this really isn't a solution. And so, you know, it's very hard to see how power sharing is going to come back now anytime soon. Meanwhile, it's the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement next month. President Biden may well be coming across. Everybody would have loved to be able to say, look, OK, everything's back up and running, but it isn't. And it's really difficult to see where it goes from here.
Will changes or amendments be made in order to get the DUP on side with this? Or do you think it will more be a case of the DUP just having to come around to this?
Well, Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris has said very firmly, no, there's no more negotiation. This is it, take it or leave it. Now, the DUP have left it. Of course, the DUP were also vehemently opposed to Boris Johnson's protocol that did create lots of problems. I think at the moment it's basically, if you don't like it, it's too bad, but we'll see down the line.
But I mean, where are we in terms of Chris Heaton-Harris forcing another election in Northern Ireland? Because, I mean, that's the danger for the DUP if they don't decide to head back into the devolved parliament. There's a danger, isn't there, that people in Northern Ireland could just say, or a danger for the DUP, that people in Northern Ireland just say, well, enough is enough. We're going to vote for another party.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the majority of people in Northern Ireland did not vote for Brexit and were reasonably happy with the protocol. So it's very difficult for the DUP because, on the one hand, there's unionists who still feel that effectively Northern Ireland is being treated separately, and that's wrong and that's outrageous. But there's a large sector of people in Northern Ireland that thinks, OK, we can live with this, let's just get on. So the DUP at an election risk being punished, and of course now Sinn Féin have a majority, or would have a majority if Stormont were sitting, which might, of course, be part of the reason that the DUP are not keen to go back in, because they will be the junior partner for the first time, which would be very uncomfortable for them.
And of course, it's called the Windsor Framework. It does have that royal title. There was meant to be a visit of King Charles to France tomorrow, which has now been postponed. President Macron saying it isn't wise, it isn't sensible for him to make that visit now. That was a hugely important trip, wasn't it, for both parties in terms of the newfound friendship, the newly enlightened, newly awakened friendship between the UK and France?
Yes. I mean, really, in symbolic terms. And of course, the King did meet EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, didn't she, around the time that the framework was signed, and there was a lot of comment about that. I don't think it's damaging to this newfound happy, good relationship that we have with the French, in that Rishi Sunak and Emmanuel Macron are sort of two peas in a pod in many ways, similar backgrounds, and clearly get on very well. But the symbolism of it was important. I don't think it will hurt our relationship. I think it's very, very embarrassing for Emmanuel Macron that there's so much chaos in France, fires at the town hall in Bordeaux, etc., that he can't safely invite King Charles to visit. And it is extraordinary, isn't it, the difference that a few miles across the Channel makes, because they're trying to put the pension age up from 62 to 64, I mean, we'd be thrilled, wouldn't we, to
64
retire
would be
at
great.
64. But the French are very, very good at striking and making their voices heard, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Very good.
They are. Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Loads of you getting in touch, actually. It's really hit a nerve, the pension age. And it's loads of different issues, really. Jack, morning Jack, says, I worked for 27 years at sea. I'm a veteran. Got very ill with psychosis, apparently brought on with PTSD. On the mend now, just completed a fine art degree, and I'm 60 in August. I never want a day off again. I won't ever retire. I had a heart attack 5 months ago. It's made me more determined. Baz, who emailed in earlier on saying it's all right if you sat at a desk reading an auto cue, you can work for longer, but if you're doing a manual job, it's a problem. Baz was wrong on if you can't do physical work, retrain and stop moaning.
Different opinion from John in Margate. Good morning to you, who says Macron is right. We spend longer in full-time education than we used to, and thankfully we live longer lives. This must mean later retirement. It's basic maths.
Yeah, and Yvonne says, how did previous generations manage to do manual work up to 65? Females have had the biggest leap from 60 to 66. No matter how much manual work they do, sadly, not everyone has gold-plated pensions like the public sector. We're living longer, we have to work longer.
And Joan makes that point about women as well. She says, I'm one of those women whose retirement age went from 60 to 66 without any forewarning. And although it's gone to court, nothing at all has come from it. I feel like I was basically robbed of 6 years of retirement payments. And it makes an enormous difference, those 6 years, to your capability to work longer. Interesting.
Well, keep your thoughts coming through. GB Views at gbnews.uk. It is 9 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines today.
And security guards at Heathrow will strike over Easter after talks over pay have failed. The airport says it has contingency plans in place to deal with Unite's 10-day walkout and keep it running as normal. Heathrow says it's offered workers a 10% pay rise.
Oscar winner Gwyneth Paltrow has testified in court denying she caused a collision between her and another skier back in 2016. Terry Anderson wants $300,000 in damages. He says he was left with life-changing injuries. Gwyneth Paltrow has countersued, though. She wants $1 in damages and she wants a reimbursement of her legal fees.
Servicemen who helped carry the Queen's coffin in Edinburgh are among those recognised in an honours list. The Royal Regiment of Scotland carried the coffin to St Giles's Cathedral to lie and rest. The Chief Steward of the Cathedral also received honours under the Royal Victorian Order, recognised in service to the monarch. Now, the pandemic hit a lot of sectors hard, and none so other than the aviation industry.
Yes, but now we're at the edge of summer season, and more than 100 new and restored routes are being launched.
But not everyone is seeing this as a positive move. The travel correspondent for The Independent and our friend Simon Calder joins us in the studio. Now, great to have you with us, first of all. You're always jetting off somewhere incredible.
Well, it's very nice not to be standing on a drafty station platform somewhere talking about rail strikes. And, of course, next week's rail strikes have been suspended. So all looking quite good for the start of the Easter holidays. If you're sticking to the trains, not, as you were just mentioning in the news, on the planes if you're flying out of Terminal 5 at Heathrow.
Yes, so bring us up to speed then. So it's start of the summer season in terms of the travel sector, but we're talking about aviation chaos.
Well, we have got a fair amount of chaos at the moment. Actually, I've just been checking out of Heathrow. British Airways has 10 departures and arrivals cancelled to places like Zurich, Toulouse and Lyon. It appears to be because of a French air traffic controllers strike. On top of that, at Manchester, long delays on a number of ski flights. There might well be people who were due to fly out early this morning to the Alps who are still watching and waiting. Also to the Canary Islands. And the thing about France is that it's on the way to an awful lot of places. And therefore, if the air traffic controllers go on strike, it gets really tricky for people. And you mentioned the strike next week. That looks increasingly likely to go ahead. 1,400 security staff at Heathrow, many of them working at Terminal 5 security, which is the British Airways terminal. If you're flying on another airline from another terminal, or indeed BA from Terminal 3, you should not be affected. The airport says it has contingency measures in place, but it is, of course, time to mark the start of the school Easter holidays for many travellers, and that's why they've I'm not sure that it will be a perfectly normal thing. But the worst thing you could do, if you were, say, flying off at 11 o'clock in the morning, is think, right, I'm going to get there at 4 in the morning to make sure I get my flight, because you'll actually mess things up for all the people who've got flights at 7, 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So a tricky one. They say they've got contingencies, but we shall have to see. Strike starts next Friday, 31st of March, and continues until Easter Sunday, the 9th of April.
So in the midst of all this,
yes,
with all the problems, we're also then hearing that actually things that some of the flights are getting back to, some of the routes and extra flights and things getting back to pre-pandemic levels, which sounds like a really good thing.
Well, yes. It depends which side of the environmental argument you are on. Next Saturday, something really significant happens for domestic flights within the UK. Air passenger duty, the tax on flying, is being halved from £13 to £6.50. So if you were flying, say, from Belfast to Manchester, you'd only pay a round trip, you'd only pay £13 rather than £26. The government says it's doing this to encourage transport within the union, but environmentalists and the rail lobby are appalled because...
Well, the rail lobby I can understand.
Well, if you take one of the many new routes, as you say, more than 100 starting up, it's Aer Lingus from Belfast to Newquay. Now, fair enough, you try and do that journey by sea and land, it's going to take you days, and it's just a flight of an hour and a half or so. But the main benefits are going to be for passengers between London and Edinburgh, which is the prime intercity route. And that's going to move people off the railways onto the planes. And Ryanair, Europe's biggest budget airline, actually said, we are going to launch 7 new domestic routes specifically because tax has come down. Because, of course, when the cost of travelling goes down, it's more viable for airlines to open routes. And environmentalists say this is terrible. The government says we're just trying to reconnect the UK and get things back to where they were on when air passenger duty was launched, because if you were flying round trip, you only paid tax once. And we're putting up the tax for lots of long-haul destinations. So a little bit more for Singapore, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur, places like that. But the environmentalists say, well, it's mad because those places you're not really going to be catching a train to. So what you should be doing is increasing domestic air passenger duty, not cutting it.
For people who do want to fly, and I mean, you can understand that, can't you, after a pandemic? Lots of people are looking to go on long-haul destinations. Let's have a word on those new air links.
Oh, there's some really exciting ones. So, for example, flying from Gatwick, as from tomorrow, you can get to Amritsar, Ahmedabad, Goa and Kochi in India. There's fantastic new routes from Prestwick in southwest Scotland, bit of a moribund airport, absolutely lovely airport, really quiet, nice to fly from, and you'll be able to get from there to Marseille and also to Pisa. I think it's mostly going to be for people wanting to go and see the joys of the Mediterranean and the Leaning Tower, rather than people necessarily coming back into southwest Scotland. On top of that, Georgetown, Guyana. Wonderful location. This is South America, and British Airways is going to start flying there from Gatwick. So there's all sorts of great opportunities. And honestly, you said we're building back aviation. I don't think I've counted so many new routes at this time of year before. And it just shows, first of all, the confidence that the airlines have, but also, as you say, the pent-up demand to make up for lost sunshine.
How long do they last before airports say this isn't working?
Well, very good point. I mean, well, let's take a route like Prestwick to Pisa. They'll give it a summer, and if they're finding that people are only prepared to pay 30 quid rather than £200, they'll give it up. But you never know when you're starting a new air route, and some of them are very successful. Air India in particular, I was talking to the boss of the airline yesterday, very excited about these new routes, which are aimed squarely at people with Indian heritage flying off to places like Ahmedabad and Amritsar, and holidaymakers like me going to Goa and Kochi. We'll see whether they work or not, but at the moment there's an awful lot of people chasing not quite enough flights, which is why fares are going through the roof.
Yeah, very interesting. How easy is it to get to Jakarta from the UK at the minute.
Right, OK, you've got multiple ways of getting there. Most people would go through the Gulf, either Dubai on Emirates or Doha on Qatar Airways, but of course flying into Singapore, continuing from there is also worthwhile. Very sadly, before the pandemic, it was, I think, the longest non-stop route from Heathrow was on Garuda from Heathrow to the lovely Indonesian capital, but that stopped along with many other routes, and it hasn't popped back yet.
You see, I'm thinking I might go and visit a Khan.
Ah,
you see,
okay.
because a Khan's been in touch this morning.
Yeah.
Good morning to you. He says, tune into you on YouTube each afternoon, as it is
Yeah,
in
of course.
Jakarta at the moment. Always good viewing. I can't thank you for watching us in Jakarta. And then listen to how I can come and see you now. Get the kettle on.
And I love that Simon just put you on the spot and you just know things.
Of course he does.
He knows everything.
Travel guru.
I think I should get out a bit more.
No, you should stay in a bit more.
Yeah,
That's the difference you should do. Really good to see you. Thank you very much.
Great to see you in person.
You see, and I understand the environmental lobby.
Yeah.
I do. I understand, you know, as Simon was pointing out, they're not happy with some of the duties coming down and things for the UK domestic flights and all the rest of it. But actually, the idea of being able to get up to Edinburgh and things in a much shorter amount of time, less hassle.
It appeals, doesn't it?
It does appeal.
And as Simon says, there's pent-up demand. People want to go on holiday. You know, we're locked in for a very long time, and there's an appetite out there for some sunshine. And you can understand that, can't you?
I'm afraid I can. There you go.
Now, coming up, we're going to be going through the biggest sports stories of the day and looking at the farewell match of England rugby star. Farewell match.
Oh, that one.
Of England rugby star Sarah Hunter.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't
Britain's
wink.
listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. Still lots to come on today's programme, including Gwyneth Paltrow has denied in court that she caused a 2016 hit-and-run ski collision in Utah.
Yeah, we're going to get the latest from our very own Stephanie Tetchy here in the studio, talking about that and all things showbiz in about 10 minutes. But first, Sarah Hunter will bring her distinguished playing career to a close in her hometown of Newcastle today when England face Scotland in the Women's Six Nations.
Yes, England's most capped player with 140 appearances. She spent the last 16 years as an international and has chosen the tournament opener as her final match in order to finish on what she says is her own terms.
Yeah, well, with the details of that and all the sport this morning, Chris Scudder is here. Who I've worked with for many, many years. I'm so
reunion.
I'm so delighted that you're here in the studio. You know Aidan, who's
I know
normally
Aidan very well.
He's gone
we
off
got a football together, different clubs.
Yeah, but he's gone to Butlins. He's gone to Butlins.
To Bognor.
To Bognor for
I heard all about it.
Yeah, someone's 40th birthday.
Stag.
40 of them have gone off.
Sounds
It's
wild.
chaos.
They'll never be seen again.
No, that's it.
Bognor Regis.
Well, he was very worried, wasn't he? He ranked the age of all the stags going. He's number 14 on the list, he said. He's very concerned.
He's very
to be one of the
concerned.
oldest.
He's one of the oldest.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he could do with
Having
retiring.
said that, we're going to talk about a footballer who's 41 in a minute.
Oh, really?
But the rugby player who's 37, you just tutor, Sarah Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever play rugby?
And safe to say I didn't know.
Right.
Netball, not rugby.
Women's rugby and the Six Nations is getting quite big now because it used to be kind of separate or buried on the same day as the men's, but it's now separate. And the crowds are getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is professionalism because the women's game, it's been very lopsided. England have been pro since 2019 and France as well. That has been the only competitive game every year in the Six Nations. That's always close. England have usually won it, but when it comes to the other teams, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, very one-sided. Teams getting beaten by 50, 60, 70 points. But this year, it's going to be different, we think, because Wales and Ireland, Wales went semi-pro last year and immediately got an upturn in results. For this year, and it all starts today, Ireland and Scotland have gone pro as well. So it's going to take a while for them all to become, used to training. Because you imagine if you're like a nurse or something like that, that's basically what it is. You work all day, then you go training, and you play the pros. They're going to thrash you.
Yeah,
and that's what's happened.
Yeah.
England have won the Six Nations for the last 4 years easily.
Really?
World Cup last year, they lost. They were unbeaten in 3 years and they lost the World Cup finals. Remember that? They played New Zealand. Big favourites, England were, but they didn't do it. So they're kind of sparky now. They want to set the record straight. And they're playing Scotland today, and it will be... they will win, you would think, because Scotland haven't got that professionalism, going yet. But that will change in future. Sarah Hunter, 37, 141 caps.
Wow.
She is the most capped player, men or women, for England, and the most in women's rugby completely. So, and she's from the northeast as well. So it'll be a proud day.
It's a good place for a farewell, then.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and also, the crowds are going up. But there was a world record crowd for the World Cup final in New Zealand last year, which was 42,000. For the Six Nations, it's normally been about sort of 10, 15,000. But when England play France, which is going to be the last game of the season this year at Twickenham, they've already sold 40,000 tickets. So that's it's probably going to be a world record crowd when that comes around in a few weeks' time. Yeah. Because they expected the two pro sides that have been England and France will probably battle it out for the title. And it's a changing world.
for women in sports.
Definitely, and I think the Lionesses, their victory last year.
Exactly right. I mean, listen, it was the same. So, and look at what the headlines that made. I mean, it was huge, absolutely huge, wasn't it? And,
I mean, there's such a focus now, a spotlight, isn't there, on women?
So I wish Sarah Hunter well today. She's, last time it'll be.
Is that young to retire from rugby?
Depends. I mean, she's been, saying she wants rugby to become pro at club level, which is a long way off for the women's game yet. It's, all the pros now are contracts from the national side.
Yeah.
It's not that old.
Yeah.
But 37. I mean, good on her though. I mean, getting out at a peak maybe, which is not a bad thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a legacy, and there'll be a lot of young kids. And the thing is, when the game goes pro, a lot of young girls are going to say, I want to be a rugby player, and
off it goes, so from 37 to 40, who's this 41-year-old in the football?
41-year-old, yeah. Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I am Zlatan. He's that guy who he looks like an Adonis. He's not short of confidence, put it that way. Whenever he played against England, he always did really well. He came back last night to play for Sweden at the age of 41 years and 5 months, which is old for a pro footballer when you're playing against 20-year-old lads who can run you ragged. He came on as a sub, but get this right, the record. He's the oldest player to play in a Euro qualifier. But it lasted about 5 minutes because there was a player who plays for Gibraltar also played last night, a guy called Lee Casciaro, who's 4 days older than him. But that record had stood for 40 years. Dino Zoff, the Italian goalkeeper, there's Zlatan. I saw him play as a young man when I was at the World Cup in Japan in 2002, and this guy came on the field, and I thought, who the hell is that? He was really confident looking, and he did this overhead kick, and the ball smacked against the post, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, he's going to be the next big star of world football. This was 21 years ago, and sure enough, that's what happened. But he played last night at 41. He's come back, and he wants to play in the Euros next year, should Sweden qualify. But they got beaten last night by Belgium 3-0, so maybe they won't qualify. But, interesting sort of, but, 41 years old.
And then only had the record for 4 minutes.
It was the same. It was the same night. And the guy from Gibraltar played against Greece, so they lost 3-0. But Gibraltar. I mean, I'm sure. I'm surprised there aren't players older than that. They are tiny, tiny, tiny. Yeah. To lose only 3-0 against Greece is pretty good going.
It is pretty good. Well, now, which sort of ties in a little bit. What's going on with England facing Ukraine tomorrow at Wembley? Is it a done deal or not?
What, that the game's on? It's
well, no, that England's going to win. Do you sort of think, with everything that Ukraine's been through?
Yeah, exactly right. You've got to think. I mean, Ukraine, they're massively proud. You can imagine. When the anthem plays tomorrow, there'll be a few tears.
Want them to win in a way, but
it's like the Eurovision.
Yeah, but they can't play, of course, their home games in Ukraine. They've been playing in Poland, places like that. It's like the Eurovision thing. They're going to be. It's everyone's second team now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Really.
You want to see them do well.
Listen, England should beat them fairly comfortably, I think.
No, but you don't want to thrash them.
No, they won't thrash them. I mean, but England's patriotic here. England need to win tomorrow. If they win tomorrow, they've beaten Italy, then they're halfway pretty much to qualifying for the Euros next year. It'll be a huge crowd because this is, don't quote me here, but this is England's time. This is, if England don't win the Euros next year or the next World Cup, it's never going to happen.
Really? Okay. Do you think we can do it? Do you think win the Euros?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. There's two teams. You're looking at England and France. We saw what happened in the World Cup. And England were a bit unlucky that night. Yeah. Harry Kane's penalty. Oh, God bless him. Over the bar. France played last night against Holland, Netherlands, to be politically correct, and they won 4-0. Mbappe scored a couple of goals. So, that could easily be the final next year, depending on how things...
Mbappe is the bane of our lives.
But listen, England got some great players.
It's a good squad, isn't it? I mean, we've been talking about them coming of age, and it has to be time now.
It's definitely time. Interesting, you're talking about age. Harry Kane, broke the record the other night, 54 goals from 80 games. Did it much quicker than anybody else. He's only 29, Harry. People think he's older. He looks a bit... He carries himself as an older guy. So, compared to Zlatan, that's 12 years younger. Yeah. If you keep yourself fit, and Harry does, and he's a real pro, he's very straight, he could be around for a long time, He'll be 30... what will he be next year? So 31, he's his birthday's in July, I think, so he'll be 31 next summer. For the World Cup, he'll be 33. He'll still be around for the next World Cup.
Yeah.
And the way he played the other night, he was brilliant. Running back, tackling back, you know, everyone was like, Harry, he gets criticised at club level, but when he puts on that England shirt, oh boy, he's a proud man, and you know, he was brilliant the other night.
Good
so
on
they're
him.
playing Ukraine tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll look forward to that. Chris, we need to leave it there, but we're catching you up with
Yeah,
you
we need to talk about Scotland and Wales who are playing today.
Yeah. Oh, we'll do that in the next hour. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, Scots.
Thank you. Now, still lots to come on the programme. We're going to be going through the newspapers with Emma Wolf and Pete Price.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. The time has just gone 8:36.
Hello, yes, I'm just dragging up the paper list so I can see what we're doing, because it's time for the papers now with writer and columnist Emma Wolf and legendary radio presenter, broadcaster, singer and all-round entertainer Pete Price, and he thinks he's a comedian as well.
And we're going to start with you, Pete.
I'm getting my own back because I haven't seen you for months. It's a joy to have you back.
I've died on my backside a few times. That means when you've had a bad time on stage.
Oh, I bet you have. Yeah.
Oh, I have. I've walked off to my own footsteps. And,
have you?
Oh, all that, yes. But that's how you learn your trade.
That's showbiz.
That's showbiz.
Showbiz. And we're talking about showbiz, talking about theatre.
Did I lead you in there?
That was a very nice segue, Pete. Very nice, yes, because theatre audiences could be made to lock up their phones.
Yep, theatre audiences.
It's a row going on. It's in The Guardian. Tell us about this.
Yeah, it's a suggestion after naked photos of James Norton on stage in A Little Life were published on the Mail online, and the images were quickly taken down. I think what's interesting about this story is it opens a minefield with theatres. I go to the theatre all the time. This week I've been to see Bodyguard, and I've been to see a new play at the Playhouse, and I'm sick to death of people walking up and down, the staff, saying, stop that filming, stop the photographs. And in America, when we were in Vegas last time, they take your phones off you now. They actually put them in a bag. It's a lot of work, but it's ridiculous. And then you get these people in concerts who video the whole concert, don't even watch the concert. So why pay for all that, the ticket? But this is right. It's intrusive when you're on stage, and it's also a pain in the so-and-so when somebody's got their camera on and it's bright lights. Then we'll go on to, forget that, we'll go on to suites. And I stood up in the theatre and I stood up and I said, ladies and gentlemen, the first half, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all the audience here to that lady there, will you unwrap your sweets now before the second half starts? And the place applauded me.
Did you really?
I did indeed. I think it's disgraceful. I'm trying to listen to the... And the other thing, when you go and see somebody like The Bodyguard, the woman next to me sings better than her on stage.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I paid to see her on stage, not you next to me. So it's a minefield.
Right.
So glad I got that out of my system.
You needed to, I think, by the looks of things. But no, that is the most annoying thing, when someone has their phone out and blocks you. You pay enough for theatre tickets.
What is the point of going to a live event if you're going to video it? You won't ever watch that again. It's like when you go to beautiful places around the world and everybody has their phones out and you think, you're not going to look at those photos. Take a photo, fine, but don't just stand there and video it. Everybody with their phones out. We're not actually experiencing the event itself or the sites itself. We're just videoing it pointlessly.
Would you support people having their phones locked up when they go to theatre?
God, it sounds very complicated. Everyone having their different phones. I want my phone back, you know, just...
Well, it'll all be in...
Could they just turn them off?
Well, yeah, people
But they won't turn them.
won't.
You know they won't turn them off. They just won't
Turn
do
them
as
off,
they're
put
told.
them in the pocket. And
There's a lovely lady...
If they turn them on, you boot them out.
There's a lovely lady at the Empire, and I said, how many steps do you do a night? She said, about 5,000. With the camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really disruptive.
Well, there's loads of places you have to hand... I mean, if you go into Downing Street, you have to hand your phone in. There's little boxes that you have to put your phones in and things, so why not?
You've been to Downing Street. I love the way you threw that in.
Love that. Yeah, I was going to say.
Always popping into Downing. I haven't been since about 2012, to be fair. It's been a long time, but... I used to go. I've been up and down that staircase. Rishi hasn't invited me yet, though.
I won't ask about you going up and down the staircase.
No.
Staying with the cameras, it's also intrusive when you're out and about and somebody's filming you or videoing you without your permission. Just ask. If you want a photograph, I'm no one, but if you want a photograph with me, ask and I'll have a photo with the greatest pleasure. But when you get somebody trying to phone you, when you just video me, I never took your photo. I just watched you walk round.
Worst, yes. Invasion of privacy, isn't it?
It is.
Emma, let's have a look at the time, shall we? And members of the royal family could start having to pay for their own accommodation.
Yes,
like
it seems that...
Don't they own it anyway?
The eviction of Harry and Meghan, or eviction or whatever, they're asking them to not politely come back, from Frogmore Cottage. I say cottage... Huge, great big place. Anyway, Frogmore Cottage was just the start. We've heard lots about Charles's kind of plans for a slimmed-down monarchy, haven't we? And it seems as though the king is going to be phasing out subsidised rents for, hangers-on. I love this line. Another source from the palace said, the king is not a housing association for distant relatives. You've got royals... Ooh, not a housing association. You've got royals who are really... You've not heard of them. They're not part of the core working royals who are living in huge houses around the country. 30-room, 40-room mansions. It's really I think it's not on. And so he wants to go for it on Slim Down Monarchy, and he's going to start asking people either to pay rent or to even set out the rent out some of these properties around the royal estate, and to start making the royal family pay its way, which I think is fair enough in the cost of living crisis.
I like him. I think since his mum died, bless her, he's come into his own. I like him, and I like Camilla. I like Camilla very much indeed.
Really looking forward to the coronation as well. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I remember unlike you three, I remember the first one.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do indeed. I remember the street parties. I was 13 years old and...
13?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. No, sorry, I wasn't 13.
Say.
No, I wasn't 13. I went to number 13 and there was 27 of us around a 13-inch television, a black and white television.
Oh. Yeah.
We'd never seen a television before. And then we had the street party outside with jelly and 2 sandwiches.
Oh, well, that sounds lovely. No, I'm looking forward to the coronation.
You're knocking on, aren't you?
I am knocking on. You know I'm knocking on.
And you
keep reminding me.
And you look great, Pete.
Only because that makeup lady back there.
She's good, isn't she?
I tell you what, no, in all seriousness, before the emails start coming in, you see, I think with great age comes great respect. And I think we celebrate people getting older. I do.
Well,
I honestly
show some
do.
respect. Because if you knew the way he talked to me off camera, it's dreadful.
You love it. You love it. Let's talk about.
I love you.
Let's talk about going on holiday, Pete. In the Express?
Yep, big full-page holiday hotspots to beat the cost of living crisis. And it's got South Africa, Bulgaria and Turkey. Sadly, they haven't put India in this as well because India is tremendous. It's becoming an amazing place. South Africa, they're saying you get more for your pound without any shadow of a doubt, and you can get some great deals. I think that South Africa is one of the most wonderful places on this earth.
Really?
And I think Cape Town is spectacular.
Yeah.
I've always been a bit nervous.
Oh, don't.
It's wonderful. When you discover Cape Town
you will
in
never
December, January, it's perfect. It's near enough. It's not even, 10-hour flight, couple of hours
and
time
same
difference.
time as here, isn't it?
Brilliant exchange rate at the moment. Cape Town is a gem.
And the Tabletop Mountain, and it was the first wine bar I discovered with good hundreds of bottles of wine. They've got a machine there that they can take a glass of wine out of a very expensive bottle and then still preserve the wine. And so you can have any wine you want without buying a bottle. It's a magnificent place.
And the vineyards around Cape Town are amazing too. You just get everything there.
And I went on tour with Petula Clark all those years ago when apartheid was there, and I went after apartheid.
Oh, because she was interesting because she performed in South Africa, didn't she? When people were saying don't, but she was saying she wanted to perform to the black populations.
Same as me. We all wanted to go to make ourselves known because it was so bad. But I cannot tell you, Stephen. And also where you are in Cape Town, you can go around to Stellenbosch, the wine country. You can go up to the coast. It's spectacular and beautiful people. Beautiful people.
Oh, well, buy us a ticket.
Are there some bargains to be had?
There are indeed, and if you go to your travel agents and have a look, and also Bulgaria, they're raving about Bulgaria. But my friends just come back from India, and they said 2 bottles of wine, a couple of drinks, and a 3-course meal, 11 quid for 2. That'll do me.
Incredible.
11 quid.
It's worth the flight,
Sounds nice, doesn't it? Yeah.
Amazing.
What should we finish off with?
The Royal...
the Waitrose one's quite interesting, I think.
Well, this is Waitrose. They're love bombing their potential shoplifters, apparently. They've had these training events, and they've decided the best way to deter people from thieving... And by the way, shoplifting is up 22% in the past year.
Cost of living.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Stores at Waitrose say they're losing thousands of pounds a week to theft, mostly through their self-service tills.
Yeah.
So their staff are getting training in how to love bomb thieves. They're being really nice to them and giving them lots of customer service. And apparently that deters them from taking things because they feel so bad and then they don't walk off with it.
You just mentioned the self-service tills. I will not go to them. I go to a human being every time because I want to keep them in a job.
Everybody I know over 60 says they will not use the self-service tills.
I want to talk to somebody. I want to keep them in a job.
I love self-service tills. I love them.
Do you?
Yeah.
Why? Tell me why.
Because I can zip round, I can beep with my phone as I'm going, chuck it straight
with
in
your
the bag.
phone. Oh, you're not one of those that gets the that trolley thing where you get...
Just
scan
it
you
with
want to
my phone.
wipe people off the face
And
of
I
the
just
earth
get it
with
in my
jobs.
bag and then I'm straight out the door.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Look at the face
It's
on
a
him.
Barrow and Furnace thing, that, is it?
No, I don't. Well, I don't know if they do it up in Barrow.
No, they'll have human beings on the till. But I hate shoplifting because what annoys me is, it's only a bit of shoplifting. It gets people sacked because costings, insurance, makes me angry.
It does. The only thing I do think is, and I'm sure the vast majority of people who shoplift are doing it because they just want to nick, they want to nick it and not pay for it. There will be some people who take things because they haven't got any money. And that I think needs to be viewed slightly differently.
There's a chemist near me and they've been having shoplifting and it's baby food and they said
it's often
we
baby
can't do
things.
anything about it. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I can't talk about this lovely lady who sang the national anthem, and you've got to listen to it. It's the most dreadful thing you've ever heard in your life.
Bad.
She didn't get the soundtrack in the ear.
Oh, no.
You've got to hear it.
It's not her fault,
It's
is
worth...
She butchered it. Apparently she butchered the national anthem.
Hysterical.
Oh, poor girl.
She apologised. Has she apologised?
Yeah.
Oh, bless
Well,
her.
you had the whole England team watching behind, trying to keep a straight face. I mean, it is, it's worth watching.
We're gonna have to have
Her
a look at
career's
that,
probably made.
It could well be, it could well be. We've got to leave it there, Emma. Pete, it has been, can I say, a joy for a Saturday.
It's a joy to come here, and she's lovely, and you two are adorable, and I just love it.
And we love you both. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. From that to this, because the French president says King Charles visiting France would have lacked sense when protests are happening across the country. Tens of thousands of people have been demonstrating against the government's plan to raise the pension age from 62 to 64. The King and Queen were due to arrive tomorrow as part of a week-long trip to Europe.
The head of the Fire Brigade Union is calling for mass non-cooperation and non-compliance with the government's new anti-strike laws. The minimum services level bill would force certain union members in key sectors to work on strike days or face losing their jobs. The FBU General Secretary, Matt Rack, says the bill is one of the most draconian attacks on the rights of working people in decades.
And servicemen who helped carry the Queen's coffin in Edinburgh amongst those recognised in an honours list. The Royal Regiment of Scotland carried the coffin to St Giles Cathedral. The Chief Steward of the Cathedral also gets honours under the Royal Victorian Order, recognising service to the monarch. Now, Gwyneth Paltrow has denied in court that she caused a 2016 hit-and-run ski collision in Utah.
Yes, Terry Sanderson, a retired optician, claims the actress's reckless skiing caused him serious injuries and is looking for a medical payout.
Oh, well, let's get the very latest from our Showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tetchy.
Good morning, Stephen and Ellie.
So you told us yesterday that Gwyneth Paltrow was going to give evidence.
Yes.
How did it go?
Well, it was the moment we've been waiting for in this court case, her taking to the stand to see how she's going to perform. Because all week people have been just kind of trying to decipher her body language, how she's coming across. But yesterday she came across, in my opinion, a bit bizarre because, you know, she's been charming with all the court officials and stuff, but her taking to the stand yesterday, she did insist that she has been a victim in this case, not the other way round, as Terry Sanderson saying that he was hit by Gwyneth downhill on this ski slope. She made some really strong but strange accusations. She said that she felt like she had been sexually assaulted when he ploughed onto her. He said for a moment he was making grunting sounds. And, you know, those kind of accusations, they're pretty strong. And, you know, for a jury to be hearing that...
Pretty strange.
It's very strange. And, you know, for Terry Sanderson, he's come out and he said, you know, his ribs were broken, he's had brain injury, he's had none of the sort of accusations which Gwyneth has come out with. So I wasn't expecting that, and I don't think the court was expecting to hear that. But Gwyneth is very much from that stance where she feels like she's being exploited for her wealth and because of her status. But yesterday, as she did explain, she said it feels like she's been wronged here in this situation. So how it's going to turn out, I don't know. But, you know, when you are in a court case and you use terms like sexually assault, that's the stuff that's going to really get people's ears open about that. You know, it's very much a he said, she said situation in this case.
Yes.
Yeah,
So what is the key argument at the crux of this? Because it's about a hit and run claim,
A hit and run,
isn't it?
yeah.
But she is claiming that he bumped into her.
So she's claiming that they were going downhill and he ploughed himself onto her. And for a split second, she sweared and then she went off, but Gwyneth didn't bring a case against him. Terry Sanderson is saying that he was downhill and basically he described Gwyneth Paltrow like a Godzilla that ploughed onto him. And then she just looked at him, went off. Her ski instructor saw him also on the slopes, didn't say anything and went off. From that, he sustained 4 broken ribs. He's had brain injury. He's gone for all these scans. And from the scans that he's had, you know, the experts have said that injury can only happen from someone actually hitting it into him. So this is where he's suing her now for £244,000.
Yeah, oh, well, it's going to be interesting to watch. What's not interesting to look at is this waxwork of the King.
Yeah, you know, obviously King Charles was supposed to be heading to Paris and to France this weekend, which is not going to be happening. But they've unveiled a new statue of him at the Grieve Museum, and it doesn't look quite like King Charles-like. It's definitely... It's got people on the fence. Obviously, waxworks will never, ever look identical to the person themselves.
It's a bit like a Baldwin brother.
Yeah. And I think it looks like King Charles maybe when he's 80 or 90.
Yeah, they've aged him, haven't they? And they've made his face a lot wider.
Yeah, and they also have one of Queen, the late Queen, which I don't understand why she's been positioned near this guy as well.
Oh no, that looks nothing like her.
That's not an ooh la la moment. It's a oh no moment.
Oh, that's terrible.
It really is.
To be fair,
watching the shadows.
I know.
It does look a bit like the King from a distance.
It does, but when you get close up, you're just like, no. I think Madame Tussauds probably would have done a better job.
Yes.
But, you know, as he's not going to be in France this weekend, I'm sure they've had to mark some kind of moment for him.
Yeah.
But,
That's the reason why he's not in France.
Yeah.
We were saying that he might be doing a protest of his own.
Oh, maybe so.
Stephanie, thank you.
guys.
See you next hour, won't we?
See you next hour.
Lovely, look forward to that. Don't go anywhere. All the top stories coming up straight after your weather.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update for the weekend from the Met Office with me, Annie Shuttleworth. We'll see sunshine and showers throughout today, but overnight tonight we're likely to see some areas seeing a frost. And that's because we're starting to see a bit of a northerly feed coming in across parts of Scotland and northern England through the rest of the day. But this front will bring showers through a lot of the morning and into the afternoon. So showers will be most persistent across southern areas of Scotland, as well as North Wales, northern England and Northern Ireland too. Some of these could be heavy for a time. Further south across parts of Wales and central England, we'll see some sunshine starting to develop into the afternoon, and it's going to feel quite warm in the sunshine, very similar to any sunshine you may have seen throughout Friday. So highs of around 14 or 15 degrees here. However, to the north, notice we're starting to see that quite strong northerly breeze, and that's going to bring a chillier feel and that risk of frost overnight tonight. In the south, though, we'll see the next batch of rain affect parts of southern England as well as parts of South Wales. The rain could turn quite persistent for a time, though there is some uncertainty on the details for this. Further north, though, it will remain dry for many areas with a touch of frost, mainly across northern areas of Scotland. So a bit of a chillier start to Sunday than Saturday, particularly across these northern areas, but a good amount of sunshine lasting well into the afternoon across parts of Scotland and then into northern England, central England by the afternoon. But for all of us, we've got this northerly breeze that's going to be bringing some snow showers to the north coast of Scotland and a much chillier feel. So temperatures quite a few degrees down on Sunday, and it will feel cool across any North Sea coasts. Staying cool throughout Monday, but we'll see fewer showers around, so a drier and probably a sunnier day than Sunday on Monday. I'll see you later.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest. And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You know, you have to stay. The Prime Minister's new Northern Ireland Brexit deal has finally been signed off.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 25th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie. Here are your top stories.
The UK and the EU have formally agreed on the new Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland after the government won the backing of MPs for the Windsor framework earlier this week.
King Charles's visit to France has been abandoned after the French president warned it wouldn't be sensible for him to go to the country amid violent protests over pension reforms.
And the courtroom drama continues as Gwyneth Paltrow testifies. The Hollywood actress denies she caused a collision between her and another skier in the US 7 years ago.
We would love to hear from you this morning. So many of you getting in touch. There's still time to join in the conversation. Then we'll go through your thoughts a little bit later on. Just have to send us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, Rishi Sunak's Brexit deal for Northern Ireland, the Windsor Framework, has now been formally signed off.
Yes, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly and the European Commissioners Maros Sefcovic finally ratified the agreement after the government won the backing of MPs earlier this week.
OK, let's talk to our political reporter, Catherine Forster, who's got all the details on this. I mean, it is significant, isn't it? It's a milestone that this has been signed off, but what it doesn't do, crucially, is restore power sharing in Northern Ireland, which is, of course, what the hope was with this.
Yes, it is a victory for Rishi Sunak in that it's a marked improvement. Even Jeffrey Donaldson of the DUP agrees that on the previous protocol. So it does make a lot of progress in terms of resolving some of those issues. But crucially, as you say, one of the main reasons for going back to the EU was to try to get power sharing back in Northern Ireland, because that collapsed a year ago because of the protocol and the problems it was causing. Now, the Democratic Unionist Party voted against it, along with 22 Conservative MPs, but still, it sailed through Parliament, but there is no sign of power sharing coming back to Northern Ireland anytime soon. And President Biden is probably going to be coming next month because it's the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. And everybody really wanted to be able to say, look, we've got this sorted, power sharing's back, people in Northern Ireland have got government doing what governments need to do for their daily lives. And that hasn't happened.
For Rishi Sunak, though, it's been a pretty good week, hasn't it? Because it was thought that there could be quite a big rebellion over the Windsor Framework, but it turned out to be much smaller than anticipated, just 20 or so voting against it.
Yes, 22, including former Prime Ministers Boris Johnson, notably, Liz Truss, former Conservative leader Ian Duncan-Smith, amongst others. But they, I think, would have hoped that they would bring considerably more people with them. And the European Research Group, that used to be such a huge force within the Conservative Party, it didn't really happen, the rebellion, just a couple of dozen. And of course, Steve Baker, who used to lead the ERG, is now Minister for Northern Ireland. And he's come out vehemently supporting Rishi Sunak's deal and saying, you know, this is a great deal, this is major progress, let's go with this. So the ERG have been sidelined, really, and Rishi Sunak will be very happy. I mean, it passed 515 votes to 29, so it was a big success. But this is the Conservative Party, so things might change next week.
Well, talking with all of that, where are we in terms of the small boats issue? And you would have thought that, because we know there's substantial backing for some serious action on this from a lot of the voting population. The polls all show that. But there is a lot of dissent, isn't there? I mean, within Parliament, but also within the Conservative Party itself.
Yes, there is. And of course, stopping the boats is one of Rishi Sunak's 5 priorities, and certainly going to be the most difficult. And they've got less than 2 years to the next election. So they need to show action now, but there is a lot of dissent within the Conservative Party. There are multiple amendments being tabled. It's coming back to the Commons next week, and all sorts of people are getting involved. Some on the left of the party. Tim Loughton's got an amendment wanting to, make sure that safe and legal routes are brought in at the same time as this legislation comes in. But more worryingly for Rishi Sunak, there's potentially about 60 Conservative MPs preparing to get behind Danny Kruger's amendment, which is basically to say that UK courts would ignore any rulings from the European Court in Strasbourg. So basically to carve out, if you like, the ECHR, and the government doesn't want to go there at the moment.
Why doesn't the government want to pull out of the European Court on Human Rights and set up specific legislation, human rights legislation in the UK?
Well, firstly, because it will cause a massive row, and although there's plenty of people that would like to see that happen, there's also plenty of people that think it would be an outrage, and they're looking towards the next election, and they're wanting to bring not just the red wall with them, but also more moderate people. They want to be seen as sensible, middle of the road. They don't want to alienate people if they can help it. And they believe, as it stands, that the legislation will be sufficiently powerful that they won't need to go there. You know, all this going to Rwanda from Suella Braverman, showcasing how nice the accommodation was, the housing that's being provided, trying to paint a picture that what we're going to do in sending people to Rwanda or other safe countries isn't outrageous, that we will be, you know, upholding our obligations. The hope is that they can get round the ECHR that way. But I think if it turns out that the legislation does go through and European courts block it again, then, of course, everything potentially would change.
Let's have a look at the Windsor framework. We've touched upon that. That was meant to have the royal seal of approval, if you like, with King Charles visiting France tomorrow. That was meant to be on the cards, but Macron has warned against it now, saying it's not sensible. That was a hugely important trip, wasn't it, for both parties and that newly awakened friendship between the UK and the EU?
It was, and it was going to be a 3-day trip, and it was going to be King Charles's first state visit abroad. So it was a big moment, and I think it's entirely understandable that it's been cancelled, looking at the pictures coming out of France and chaos, really. And it would have been massively embarrassing for Macron if anything had happened and protesters had been anywhere near King Charles. But very embarrassing to have to cancel it as it is for Macron. I don't think it impacts on our relationship at all. I mean, King Charles met Ursula von der Leyen from the European Commission around the time that the framework was signed. Macron and Rishi Sunak get on very well. They're both background in finance. They're both smartly dressed. You know, they clearly have a bond, and we do seem to have forged this new relationship. But King Charles's visit would have been the icing on the cake, and it's a shame, but they'll reschedule. But first of all, Macron's got to get a grip of what's happening, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, he certainly has. It's not going to be easy either. Really good to see you, Catherine. Thank you very much indeed. It is... Oh, sorry.
That's fine. You go.
I was just going to tell the ladies and gentlemen what time it was.
Yeah, please do.
It's 8 minutes past 9. This time tomorrow, it'll be 8 minutes past 10.
And we'll be done.
Change.
Yeah.
Clocks change, so don't forget to get up an hour earlier to... No. Yes, an hour earlier tomorrow. It's very confusing, isn't it? Spring forward, fall back.
We do lose an hour's sleep, though, so we're
Yes.
not looking forward to that, are we?
No, we're not.
You'll probably still be in bed, lucky devils.
I might still be in bed.
No, don't leave me. I
Could
need
do
you.
that.
I need you tomorrow. OK, let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today. And security guards at Heathrow will strike over Easter after talks over pay have failed. The airport says it has contingency plans in place to deal with Unite's 10-day walkout and keep it running as normal. Heathrow says it's offered workers a 10% pay rise.
Oscar winner Gwyneth Paltrow has testified in court denying she caused a collision between her and another skier in 2016. Terry Sanderson wants $300,000 in damages. He says he was left with life-changing injuries. Gwyneth Paltrow's countersued for $1 in symbolic damages, but she wants reimbursement of her legal fees.
Servicemen who helped carry the Queen's coffin in Edinburgh are among those recognised in a new honours list. The Royal Regiment of Scotland carried the coffin to St Giles's Cathedral to lie in rest. The Chief Steward of the cathedral also received honours under the Royal Victorian Order, recognising service to the monarch.
So many of you getting in touch on weird and wonderful things, which is quite what I like. Malk, morning Malk, wants to talk biscuits.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm all for, because we're saying a lot of people are buying like not the branded biscuits, the cheaper ones. But he says the world is going to end because my favourite biscuit is the sport biscuit. It's no longer available. Why? The world's gone mad. I remember sports biscuits.
What are they then? Are they biscuity chocolate?
No, they're not
right?
chocolate. No, I think the sports biscuit was just like a biscuit.
Oh, right. I don't think I remember those.
No.
Donald says the problem out here is supermarkets are clearly profiteering. We all need to stop buying pre-packaged food and start cooking ourselves. Very interesting, because we did a segment yesterday about growing your own, and it sounds quite easy.
Yeah.
Haven't put it to the test yet, but it's the way, obviously, it used to be done.
Well, you've only had a day.
Yeah, Donald says some products in supermarkets have increased by 60%. It's blatant profiteering. Yes, and packets have shrunk as well, if you've noticed. Shrinkflation is happening as well.
Yes.
Much fewer biscuits in your packet.
No, that's true. John from Cornwall's been in touch on working in older age, 'cause obviously the French are up in arms about having to work till they're 64. We should be so lucky. John says, my other half and I both work on a part-time basis. She's 75, I'm 78. She works in charity shop retail. I drive buses and put in 30 hours a week.
Wow.
In college term time, I'm driving one of the largest double-decker buses that are approved for use on UK roads. Wow. For some of my young passengers, I'm old enough to be their grandpa, but still going strong.
It does depend, doesn't it? There are some people who are way into their 70s and 80s who want to keep working. You know, they find that it keeps them fit, keeps them young,
keeps
exactly, keeps
going.
their mind engaged, that kind of thing. Others, they get to 60 and they think they deserve the retirement, and, you know, rightly so. A lot of them worked very, very hard. It does divide people, doesn't it?
Angela Rippon, who keeps popping
Still
up on
going.
here.
She's still going.
78, and proudly so.
How old is she?
78.
Is she? Looks great.
Yeah, I mean, she's amazing.
She's very tiny, is Angela Rippon.
Tiny, fit as a fiddle, sharp as a tack.
No, I've never seen her in person. I saw her last weekend. She's like this.
Oh yeah, she's lovely, is Angela.
Yeah, lovely. She seemed very
nice person.
Well. Yes.
But it's up to you. See, I fully intend to retire at 60, if I can.
And you would deserve to.
If I could afford to.
Well,
that's the thing. I'm a northerner, though. I'm a big saver. Actually, I do believe in saving. I've always saved. My grandma always saved. Used to get the bank books out on a Sunday, because we lived with Grandma. Well, she lived with us.
Oh.
And so on a Sunday night, the bank books would come out. This is way back in the 80s. Say how much money you've got in the bank book now. £100 here, £100 there.
You do your finances on a Sunday.
So, yeah, she used to. She used to love it.
It'd be a very good habit, isn't it?
It's a good habit.
Bookkeep on a Sunday.
Short arms and long pockets, that's me. Tell you that for nothing. Which comes in very handy when it comes to energy costs.
Yes.
At the moment. And I have been very, I have to say, in our house, we have been very careful.
Yeah. I wish I had been.
It's paid off, actually.
I am trying to be a bit more careful. Lots of us are, and that's because thousands of households have just days left to claim up to £600 of free cash towards those energy bills that just keep on getting higher.
Yeah, so it's much-needed money, much needed for a lot of people, and the payment is part of the winter fuel allowance given to pensioners to help them with higher costs during the colder months.
Well, the payment is usually made automatically, but there could still be thousands of people who haven't received their money yet and may need to apply instead.
Well, let's talk to Energy Policy and Technology Senior Research Fellow and friend of the programme, Malcolm Grimston. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Look, with this, it seems like it's those people who are most in need who are least likely to have been given this automatically.
Well, you should bear in mind, it's gone to around 11.5 million people, and there's a few thousand who it hasn't gone to automatically, so we should keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
It's basically the people who aren't on a state pension for some reason, but have reached pensionable age, or who have deferred their state pension and who haven't had the payment before. So if you had it last year, you have no problem, but if you're in those groups, you then had to specifically apply. So a relatively small number of people, but obviously important to those people.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's not surprising in a way that some people have missed out, because this is pretty complicated, isn't it?
Right, so we've got the winter fuel allowance, which goes to pensioners. We've got the cold weather payment. Now, that is triggered if the temperature drops below a certain amount. It's £25 a week to people on certain benefits, but you can't get that in Scotland, which has a different scheme. There's the warm homes discount. Now, that's £150. Doesn't depend on the weather conditions, but does depend on whether you're on benefits or not, whereas the winter fuel payment doesn't depend on that. All that's on top of the £400 we all got through our bills over the course of the last few months, and of course the energy price guarantee that sits over the top of all of this. So I think the word complicated is terribly well chosen.
Right, so how do people go about finding out if they are eligible and if they can get their hands on the cash?
Well, most of it does come automatically through. So, for example, the warm homes discount, the £150, goes straight to the electricity company, and you don't have to bother with it. You'll just find that your bill is lower when it comes through the door or whatever.
It's worth pointing out with that is it does actually show on the bill, doesn't it? It's like the money we've all had off every month, so it does show on the bill, which actually is quite useful to prove you've had it.
That's right, yes. And I think beyond that, the government website actually is rather good at explaining the schemes. So anybody who, it's particularly, rightly so, is targeted for those who are in the most need. Most of these payments, the £400 we all got wasn't, which I think was I was in the crazy position. I was still on my 2-year deal, so I was still paying what I was before, but I was getting this £400 discount. So I was actually paying less for my electricity than I was before the crisis. So I don't think that will be repeated. But the government website, for those who have access to that, to the internet, is a good source. Otherwise, your electricity company will be able to give you information as to whether you might be eligible for any of these. But usually, as I say, you don't need to apply. It's only in certain quite rare situations where you would.
We are told that a lot of the prices are starting to come down now. What's the word I'm looking for? Wholesale. That's the word. Thank you, darling. The wholesale prices are coming down, but there's still this fundamental problem, isn't there, in the energy sector, that the way gas prices and electricity prices are linked. We need to break that, don't we?
It's difficult. I mean, I'd say the suppliers of electricity aren't actually making much money out of this. In fact, we've seen 30 of them actually gone bust through this. It's the upstream people with that. And the way the market works is when wind is blowing and the sun's out, that's great, but a lot of times it isn't. And gas is what we call the swing fuel. That's the one that takes up the effort when the others aren't available. And because of that, the way it works, the way electricity charging on a short-term basis works is that the central body, basically the national grid, works out how much power is needed, sees what bids have come up, chooses all the bids that are needed, and the last one that came in terms of price, so the highest price, is what the whole market gets. Now, without that, you could do it, but it would be very, very difficult for companies then to think about investing in new electricity when we need it, because they might find themselves hardly gaining any money at all on those days when the wind was blowing, and that would be very difficult to plan for. Now, we've already got quite a crisis in investment in new power capacity. We've got a lot of our old plants, pretty much all our coal plants have come off, 2 nuclear stations have come off in the last 6 months. We desperately need to be investing in new capacity. And if you didn't fund it this way, you'd have to find a different way of funding it. But either way, we would still end up paying for it.
Right, yeah, it's one of those.
There's nobody else to pay for. You know, we haven't invested for a long time in power. We need to, because electricity is so vital for us. And one way or another, we are the only people who can pay for it. Yeah, we're the ones who are there.
What energy should we be investing in, do you think, Malcolm?
So it's encouraging that nuclear is getting a lot of attraction, because that has the advantage of being both low carbon and reliable. We will see offshore wind continuing. Offshore wind is better than onshore wind in the sense that the wind is more reliable, but more difficult in terms you need an awful lot of new power lines to bring it onshore. And actually, in a lot of countries, it's the power lines that are slowing down renewables rather than the actual wind generators or the solar panels. Inevitably, we're going to continue to be burning gas for a long time, and we need to, I think, have a mature discussion over the extent to which we use our own reserves or continue being dependent on imports, because since the Ukraine invasion, we've seen just how vulnerable we are if we become over-dependent. Europe as a whole becomes over-dependent on imports. So gas is certainly going to be a major player for the foreseeable future. We've a lot of gas-powered capacity, but it's beginning to look a bit old. They reckon that would have about a 20-year lifetime, and most of these were built around the sort of turn of the millennium. So at some point, we're going to have to look at replacing some of that gas capacity. But it's getting the mix right between being low carbon, being affordable, and being secure. And that's not an easy business. It's what makes energy such a fascinating field.
Well, we'll be talking about it, what you say, for a very long time still to come. Malcolm, thank you very much indeed. And if you do need to get online, get some help, talk to your energy company. If you are one of those people who you think should be eligible for this money and you haven't had it automatically, it's worth checking.
It's free money, isn't it, at the end of the day? And if you're entitled to it, get on the phone, get it, yeah.
Don't go anywhere, we've got lots coming up for you, including all the sport with Chris and the showbiz with Stephanie.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end.
I can't
Britain's
wink.
listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
9:24, good morning to you. Are you watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Em?
Still lots to come on the programme, including we'll have the latest on Wales and Scotland's upcoming matches with Chris Scudder and former Wales striker Robert Earnshaw.
And we're getting into the week's showbiz news, including... yes. It's King Charles in Paris right now. Not the real one, obviously, because it looks nothing like him. Stephanie Tetcher will tell us what on earth is going on with this.
And they've put weight on him as well, haven't they? People make double chin, triple chin.
Mind you, should have put a wick in the top and it'd make a blooming good candle.
Yeah, it
Last
probably
for
does
ages.
need to be made into candle, I think. It's not a very good waxwork figure.
No, anyway, you
yeah.
got any thoughts? Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, an internationally renowned teaching hospital. You're right.
Yeah, sorry.
International renowned teaching hospital in London, specialising in cardiac and cancer care, is celebrating its 900th anniversary today. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's St Barts, protecting its heritage by undertaking several renovation projects to preserve some of the oldest Grade 1 listed parts of the building. We sent Lisa Hartle to investigate.
St Barts is Britain's oldest hospital.
Founded in 1123, today it's renowned for its work in cancer treatment and heart surgery. Former surgeon gynaecologist to the late Queen, Sir Marcus Setchell, is the deputy chairman of St Bart's Heritage, fundraising to preserve the historical parts of the hospital.
They didn't actually have doctors in the early years in 1123. They were really nuns from the priory and nurses, but they weren't qualified nurses. They were carers, basically. But I think its long history is a very important part of it.
A £10 million conservation project is underway as part of the 900th anniversary, restoring items like this William Hogarth painting dating back to the 1730s.
In the 18th century, they started to undertake the first medical procedures, the first operations, which you can imagine at that time was quite a terrifying thing because there wasn't anaesthetic, anything like that. Behind us on Hogarth's painting, you can see a sort of group of figures who represent the patients of the hospital with various diseases and ailments, including a blind man with a stick. And that's a reminder that the hospital had actually appointed its first eye surgeon in 1720. So medical advances were happening, medical education was changing. And from the 18th century onwards, the hospital began to develop into what we really know today as a modern hospital.
Barts is one of the leading heart hospitals in the world. Chief Surgeon Stephen Edmondson has been at St Bart's for over 40 years.
But Barts has always had a tradition of excellence. It was very clear to me when I came here that he had that tradition. And it has an illustrious history, but I think we're very now centred and grounded in the here and the now, and we're doing really good work now that's innovative. What we try to do is do the basic stuff extremely well, but the thing that Barts does on top of that is it innovates. So we have specialist programmes that sometimes are unique to Barts, and that's been the way, in my role as clinical director, I've tried to develop the service. And I think if there's a single word that typifies Barts about excellence, it is the culture that we have of striving all the time to do the best for our patients.
A breast cancer treatment centre is also being built as part of the 900th anniversary campaign.
We will have surgery from the breast surgeons to the plastic surgeons all on one site so that more challenging breast surgery can be done, for example, doing reconstructions immediately for patients to have choice about what reconstruction they have at the time.
With the preservation and innovation at St Bart's, staff hope the iconic hospital will continue to serve generations to come. Lisa Hottle, GB News, London.
And do you know a fact about St Bart's?
No.
London's oldest surviving church. It's a church and a hospital, and they were both there 900 years ago, and they're still used today for the same uses. Very cool, isn't it?
It is. I wonder why they built a church and a hospital together.
Because you need to pray to get well.
I suppose that was the thing back then.
You'd be desperate. You'd be on your knees praying.
You sort of wonder what medical care was like 900 years ago.
You wouldn't want to
Not
know,
great.
I think, no. But the church looks good. I want to go on a trip.
Oh, look, doing your field trips.
St Bartholomew the Great, it's called, the church on that site.
Oh, there you go.
Lots of you getting in touch this morning, GBnews at gbnews.uk, and on Twitter at GBnews. Mary has been talking about those waxwork figures. And we got that picture. This is of King Charles. It's in France, and let's just say, we think it looks more like a Baldwin brother, like Alec Baldwin, the actor.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like him. That's
No, I mean, there's a look
say.
from a distance, you can sort of see it, but close up, it's just not.
Not so much. Well, Mary's been in touch saying those waxwork figures are a disgrace. The French president should get them remodelled. And that oversized hat plonked on the late Queen's head, we've got the one of the Queen as well, of the late Queen's head, is shameful.
You can see where they're going with this. It just doesn't quite hit the mark.
They've made him too wide and too big.
Yes, but the Queen, I don't know if we've got pictures of the Queen, and the Queen one is awful.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
horrible.
Dreadful. It looks nothing like her.
And I think it's particularly difficult, the Queen, because obviously she has since passed. It doesn't seem very respectful, does it?
They've got the arm right on the King, though, because he's got his arm.
The body language looks correct.
The body language is good.
And Mary has been in touch on Twitter saying, food drives me nuts. It's way cheaper cooking your own. You buy a beef or a chicken for £5, plus lots of veg. It'll make plenty of meals for two or for a family. It's idiot-proof. we need to do the sums.
There's a lot to be said for... I mean, I'm doing that at the minute.
Are you?
Yeah, doing a lot of just cooking from scratch.
Oh, I love
and there's a lot to be said for it.
Tastes better as well.
It does taste better. It's nice. You can have the odd disaster, though.
Okay.
I made something the other day and it was too hot.
As in spicy?
Too spicy.
Oh, dear.
I overdid the chilli powder.
Oh, dear.
So, you know, if you have a
Well,
disaster...
that's not so good.
You've just got to eat it anyway and keep on smiling through. Or biscuits.
Oh, yeah, let's talk biscuits.
Biscuits. Kevin. Morning, Kevin. Kevin says, I've always bought branded biscuits, but due to rising prices, I now buy broken biscuit assortments, 1 kilogram boxes.
I did that as a student.
A large number are not broken, but misshaped, and a fraction of the price of other biscuits. That sounds pretty good.
Oh, it's so fun. I used to do that as a student because I just couldn't be without my biscuits, the cup of tea, but they're so expensive. So I did this, Kevin. I bought the broken biscuits, and the best thing is you'd get like an amalgamation of biscuits where they just all just stuck together in the factory, and you'd have like a jammy dodger with a digestive and a custard cream and
all together.
All together, just you
Just
didn't
good
know
if
what you
you're
were
on
going
a
to bite into
diet.
next. No.
Good if you're on a diet, because the old rule is broken biscuits don't count.
Great. Yeah, great.
So my mother used to say.
That's a good money-saving tip.
Petrol prices, because obviously it's hard to explain why we're now talking about petrol prices, because we've just covered it all this morning. Duncan says, I would gladly paint everything brown and orange again if we could have 1970s petrol prices. Because I would say, someone else emailed in and said the 70s were great. And I'm like, everything was brown and orange.
That's your memory of the 70s.
It's my memory. And an elephant cord.
Elephant cord?
Elephant cord, corduroys. You know, that thick... Is that lost on the youth of today?
Oh, that's lost on me.
I used to have to wear elephant... like rust brown elephant cord trousers.
Oh, dear.
Oh.
That's best left in the 70s, I think.
I mean, honestly, I'm scarred for life. Mike, though, says petrol in Sainsbury's in Sedgefield was £1.39.9p a litre yesterday, lowest I've seen for a long time.
Yep.
Lowest, I've never seen anything that low for a very, very long time.
It excites us, doesn't it?
It does, 139.9, I'd go there.
I drive to that. That's it. And back to biscuits, Nigel says, there's only one fig rolled.
I used to like a fig roll. Do they still make fig rolls?
No, I've never had one.
Haven't you?
No, never had
Oh,
one.
no, they're all right. They're all right.
Can I say something really cute that happened this morning, though? So one of the producers, Joseph, I mentioned last week my favourite chocolate. Maybe I shouldn't say the name.
No, say the name.
I won't say the name because we'll get in trouble. But I said to him my favourite chocolate, and today he brought me in a bar. And he said, I've just remembered this is your favourite, so he gave me a bar.
And they cost £3.50.
And it's really expensive. It's been like £3.50. So cost of living crisis. It's not. It's hacking chocolate now, but very nice, Joseph. Thank you very much. Maybe we shouldn't show it either because we
Shouldn't know, I won't, but she's eaten most of it. Yeah. And poor Joseph can't afford to eat for a fortnight now.
Oh, it's very bad. And I started tucking in at about 7 o'clock this morning.
And he's skinny. They'd be wasted away by the time.
Well, I'm eating all his food.
You are, basically. Anyway.
Being told to move along.
Yes, move along now. Move along. Nothing to see here. We've got all the sport with Chris Scudder and the Showbiz with Stephanie Tetchy in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:38. A very good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's talk about the sports now, shall we? Because Wales take on Croatia this evening and will be the first match since the retirement of Gareth Bale as the new era begins under manager Rob Page.
Oh, yeah, bit of a nightmare World Cup. Wales looking for a fresh start. Pale said the squad is resetting and reframing after going out in the group stage in Qatar.
Well, we're joined in the studio by sports broadcaster Chris Scudder, who joins us here. Brilliant to have you, Chris. We've also got Stephanie Tetchy here with us, who's going to be bringing us all the showbiz stories. But we'll start with you, Scudder. And should we start with the football then? Wales, Croatia?
Yeah, well, we've talked about England, haven't we? They're playing Ukraine tomorrow. But, you know, today it's about the two teams who are kind of in transition, Wales and Scotland. Scotland, their coach, Steve Clarke, he signed a new contract yesterday. It's been a bit of real soap opera with them for qualifying for major tournaments. They got to the Euros in 2020 and they had that draw with England. Remember that? Remember walking around London where there was just Scots everywhere. In the old days, I remember in the 70s when that happened, and they totally invade London. Totally invade. Incredible it was. But, you know, before that, they hadn't qualified since the 98 World Cup. Wow. So, and Wales, they've been to 3 of the last 4 tournaments. So, but as you mentioned, they have lost the man, Gareth Bale. Now, you can't underestimate how much influence he has had because, you know, he without him, they probably wouldn't have gone anywhere close to where they have got in those major tournaments. There he is. You know, you look at his stats. I mean, he's not that old. I mean, I don't know why he's finished. He's 33 years old. They're playing Croatia tonight in Split, and playing for Croatia is a certain Luka Modric, whose age is 37.
He's a beast on the pitch.
He's a great player. Listen, and he was the one who did for England effectively in the World Cup semi-final in Russia. So you know, Bale, he seems to. I don't know, he burned very brightly and kind of faded away. When he was in Madrid, earning too much money probably, and when he turned out, you know, it was good to see him in the World Cup in Qatar, but he didn't really do a lot, did he?
But who do you think... Oh, sorry,
you go.
Who do you think is going to be the new shining stars?
For Wales?
For Wales,
They're in transition. They've got a load of kids in their squad, but you can't expect miracles, really. And, you know, Wales, the pool of players they can pull from is pretty small, really. It's the same for Scotland. You know, for them to qualify for the Euros next year, it's going to be quite tough. They've got a group. They've got Turkey in their group as well, and they're playing Croatia tonight. I suppose it's best to play the hardest team first, get it out of the way. And you know, Croatia might be a slow start, as you never know. And then they've got to play them at home. They've got Latvia in their group as well. It's 2 from the group to go through. So touch and go. Scotland have got Cyprus today, and then they've got Spain and Norway. So tough group for them as well. But they did qualify for the Euros in 2020. So things, you know, on the upturn. Wales probably on the downturn a little bit. I think that's pretty fair.
Do you think they'll qualify?
Who?
Wales.
No.
Oh.
I just think it's tough. It's tough. I mean,
you might upset your guest with that one.
Well, is Robbie there? Robbie Earnshaw.
He should be. Yes, he is.
Hi, Robbie. We actually met in Qatar.
I remember. Yeah,
you remember? We had a coffee just before probably one of the England games. But I mean, let's not be unkind to Wales, I don't think. But you know, Gareth Bale, when he started games, Wales won about half, and when he didn't start, they won about a quarter. And at his peak, he contributed to more than half of the Wales goals as an assist or as a goal scorer. So, you know, you take that away, they're going to miss him, aren't they?
Absolutely. Do you know what? He's, I say it now openly because he's the greatest Welsh player we've ever had. And how do you replace that? Well, you don't. Number one, you've just got to celebrate it and move on. The moving on, I think, now is just about, okay, how do we adapt? I think we have to adapt with our new players that are going to come in. You know, I look at, you know, the likes of Harry Wilson playing in the Premier League at Fulham, Brennan Johnson. I think he's been a big hit in the Premier League for Nottingham Forest this year, but he's missing tonight. So that's going to be a loss. But we've got players now that we have to be more as a team than relying on the unbelievable talent of Gareth Bale that we've had.
Yeah, he's only 33. I was, it was, you know, young to be knocking on the head, really. But it's been a knock-on effect, hasn't it? Joe Allen's gone, Chris Gunter, Johnny Williams, all his experienced players who were part of that fantastic team in 2016 when they got to the semi-finals of the Euros. Obviously, Bale led them there. I mean, you mentioned Harry Wilson there. A lot of these players are not playing for their clubs either as well, so it makes it very difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was very similar to how, you know, we had over the last maybe four years, maybe, with Gareth Bale, not really playing for his club, but then he turns up for the national team and it's just like a different player, this different energy that comes in. So that's the energy we've got to have. I think the great thing with Wales is we've built up, I was there, you know, 13, 14 years ago, when this new transition with this new team, trying to develop us as a team. We just, where the bonus was to have the Gareth Bale, the superstar that could also add the goals, the assists, the game-changing moments. But the one thing we've had with Wales is we're a team. We are built as a team. Now it's just about, okay, now who's going to be the ones who takes over? The Gareth Bales, the Chris Gunters, the Joe Allens who've retired. And I see positive things, the likes of Ethan Ampadu, who's come through Chelsea, he's on loan in Italy. Harry Wilson, I think he's a talent. Brennan Johnson, like I mentioned, Kiefer Moore's playing in the Premier League and scoring goals as well. So I'd love to see us now become more as a team, because I think this is going to be the most challenging qualification we've had in the last few years.
Do you think they'll make it, Robbie?
Do you know? I think they'll do. Yeah, I think we'll make it, because I think we look at Armenia. I think are we a better team? Can we be better a team? Yes. Latvia, Croatia is going to be tough. Turkey is going to be a challenge, of course. So I think us as being a team in this qualification, I think we can make it.
We've got to ask you. You might remember, Stephen. Robbie was famous for a goal celebration. Not going to ask you to do it now, but it was. How would you describe it? It was a somersault.
It's the.
I don't know how you did it.
Yeah, the somersault. Yeah, the somersault. Yeah, I was doing it from a young kid. It became my trademark, celebrating. But that's what I used to love. I mean, and that's what I mean. I always used to love these type of weeks, celebrating for Wales as well as in the Premier League. But yeah, my trademark goal celebration. Still to this day, everybody talks about it. So. It was a big hit.
Yeah. Stephen, you could do that.
I copy you, Robbie. I do it after every show, let me tell you. I wish.
It was brilliant, honestly. A few players do it, but Robbie was the best. He was just like a gymnast.
There you go. You've either got it or you haven't.
I tried my best. I tried my best.
Brilliant stuff. Robbie, we better leave it there, I guess. But really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good luck to Wales, yeah.
I love it when you get these former players on who are... They're just really nice people.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at the Qatar World Cup, and I was just sitting having a coffee, and there's Robert sitting on the other table. You know, we had a good chat about, being an ex-player and all the rest of it. It's that was a weird World Cup. Yeah, it really was. That's the next one's 3 years away, and wait till we get to the States.
Where is the next one?
States, Canada, and Mexico, which is going to be with 48 teams. So the likes of Wales and Scotland who are playing, because the Euro's only 24 teams, right? So quite hard to qualify. You've got to finish in the top 2 of your group. Or there's the kind of backdoor route, which you don't want to be worrying about really. You want to try and qualify, but the next World Cup's 48 teams, so that's going up from 32 to in Qatar. So the smaller nations like Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, with respect, have got a better chance of getting there. So and they'll be saying that all around the world as well. So
yeah, well,
there's a lot of teams there.
Be interesting to see. Should we have a bit of showbiz?
Yeah. Come over to my side.
Well, yes. And what do we make of what is going on with Gwyneth Paltrow taking to the stand yesterday?
It's what people have been waiting for, to hear her side of the story and what happens, because it's a very much he said, she said court drama in terms of who is guilty here, who collided into who. In Utah, when it comes to skiing, whoever's further down the slope has right of way, and Gwyneth is insisting that it was Terry Sanderson who actually collided into her. From taking to the stand yesterday, she did make some accusations where she said she had felt like she had been violated. She even said for a split moment in her head, she said she felt like she had been sexually assaulted, because when he ploughed into her, she said that she had some grunting noises. So to hearing all of this, it's really quite dramatic. And for me, as with the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp court case, when you've got actors coming on, into court, sometimes you think, are they just overacting? But Gwyneth Paltrow doesn't strike me as that person. In this court case, she's been sued for over almost £300,000, but if you include the legal fees, this could be quite costly, and it could actually go up to £3 million once everything's said and done, if she is found guilty. But it's one of those things you have to think, in a situation like this, if it wasn't Gwyneth Paltrow involved and it was just a normal skier, would have this been taken to the courts? But Terry Sanderson is very much arguing that he's been left with concuction, broken ribs, and his family have taken to the stand and said very much they've lost their father, in the sense that his character has changed so much in the 7 years since the incident took place. Next week is going to get even more I do find these court dramas entertaining, but Gwyneth's children, Apple and Moses, who she shares with Chris Martin, will be taken to the stand, because from her version of events, she couldn't ski for the rest of the day. She's known as she's an intermediate skier, so she said she was quite affected by that. So her children will be taken to the stand next week to share their point of view of what happened, and also Terry Sanderson will also be getting on jury as well.
This is going to rumble on, isn't it? Do you think it's affecting her reputation?
I think so. If she's found guilty, I think it will make a dent in her, reputation, because she's Miss Wellbeing, she's Miss Healthy, Miss, promoting mental health, and to have someone here, a man who's come out, who's 76, who says that his whole life has been shattered by a moment with Gwyneth, which she didn't seem apologetic for, I think it will influence her brand. But the thing is, celebrities always bounce back. It's entertainment.
Yeah, no, that's true. What are you? Can I and just throw you under the bus with this one? What are you watching? What are you watching at the moment? What is worth watching at the moment?
At the moment,
what's
what am I
hot?
watching? Do you know what? I'm watching a lot of documentaries on Netflix at the moment.
Because they seem to be the big thing at the minute. I mean, obviously we all love a drama and all that, but documentaries are a big selling point
like
now, aren't
at
they?
the moment, I don't know if you guys remember that air flight, that plane that went missing, the
MH370.
Yes, I'm watching that on Netflix, and it's a bit creepy because now, you know, it's been years since the incident took place, so they're kind of seeing all what happened with the case and where did this plane go. So I really like documentaries like that. They're quite good.
What about Night Agent? Have you delved into that?
What is Night Agent?
That's on Netflix. Apparently, according to man, it's the #1 in the UK at the moment.
Oh, tell me about it, Stephen. What's it about?
It's a CIA thing in the White House. Quite pacey.
I think I've seen the advert. Yeah.
Do you like that sort of thing?
I thought you said Ted Lasso there for a minute.
No,
have you seen Ted Lasso yet?
Yes, I have. I do like Ted Lasso.
I had a thing happen 2 years ago. I was at Wembley for the Cup final, and I was doing some interviews, and the cast came out. I didn't know who they were. It was exactly one series ago, and it went massively viral. They stayed in character.
Yeah.
Oh, did they?
It was absolutely brilliant. It was so funny, and they were brilliant. And as they said to me afterwards, it was their improv. So when you're learning to be an actor, that's what they throw you into improv situations, and they were just brilliant. It completely fooled me. I didn't know who they were, but I've since been mates with a couple of them, and the new series has just started.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it.
And they're all big stars now.
Scudders, have you seen the waxwork of King Charles? Right, we're going to get a picture up for you. I just want your reaction to it. I'm throwing you under the bus now.
Okay, no.
I want to know what you make of this. This is a waxwork of King Charles that's been unveiled in France. What do you make of this?
Just similar to you, Chris. Actually, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't wear waistcoats for a start, but I don't know. That expression is kind of.
It's slightly constipated.
Yeah. Oh, and we've got one of the Queen as well. The Queen is stood next to
this one really bugs me, and the position of it is just so wrong.
Yeah.
She doesn't look like
in the
her
shadows,
at all.
isn't she?
I think they've got
cross-eyed.
Yeah, I think they've got the fashion right, because from afar you can tell that's King Charles and you can tell that's the Queen. But I think upon closer inspection, it's just
looks like a totally different person.
Yeah,
isn't it?
They've got the handbag thing right, the posture, but
both of their posture.
No, face is totally wrong.
I wonder if they do send these pictures to like Buckingham Palace and be like, "Oh, this is our latest waxwork of the King. Wonder what his reaction will be." But he'll probably have to be quite courteous.
Probably have to be vaguely polite, but it's extraordinarily bad.
One of the worst I've seen.
Off
Honestly,
with his head.
Well, exactly. Well, they could take that head off and melt it down. And
yours,
start again.
Yeah, or use it. As you said,
thanks a lot.
put a wick in it and make it into a big candle.
Yeah,
that was a good idea.
A lovely
for you.
candle.
Well, Stephanie,
Recycling.
Chris, thank you so much. Fabulous to have you with us.
We're back tomorrow morning, bright and early. Don't forget, though, the clocks are going forward tonight.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update for the weekend from the Met Office with me, Annie Shuttleworth. We'll see sunshine and showers throughout today, but overnight tonight we're likely to see some areas seeing a frost. And that's because we're starting to see a bit of a northerly feed coming in across parts of Scotland and northern England through the rest of the day. But this front will bring showers through a lot of the morning and into the afternoon. The showers will be most persistent across southern areas of Scotland, as well as North Wales, northern England and Northern Ireland too. Some of these could be heavy for a time. Further south, across parts of Wales and central England, we'll see some sunshine starting to develop into the afternoon, and it's going to feel quite warm in the sunshine, very similar to any sunshine you may have seen throughout Friday. So highs of around 14 or 15 degrees here. Over to the north, notice we're starting to see that quite strong northerly breeze, and that's going to bring a chillier feel and that risk of frost overnight tonight. In the south, though, we'll see the next batch of rain affect parts of southern England as well as parts of South Wales. The rain could turn quite persistent for a time, though there is some uncertainty on the details for this. Further north, though, it will remain dry for many areas with a touch of frost, mainly across northern areas of Scotland. So